Game begin.
Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Spike Colony podcast. I am with the Ball Lightning, Michael J. Flores. I'm your co-host, the Sulfuric Vortex.
I'm so much better than you.
Sometimes
you get
there's
sighted
three.
out in the mirror.
Sometimes there's 3 of each. Sometimes there's 2 and 4. Sometimes there's 4 and 0. Mike and I had to skip last week because we were playing a pre-modern 1K that ended up with 16 players. It was
no further comments about the 1K we were playing in.
$650. I tricked Mike into
150 cards I owned were in the top 8.
I tricked Mike into playing the optimal burn list, which is comprised, of course,
not the optimal burn list, and I lost the mirror.
Comprised of 21 lands and 4 Sulfuric Vortex. Noted homies like Ty Thomason was there, also playing burn, and then noted Nemesis, person we'd never met before, who showed up with blue-white land still.
Beat a deck you the first round, beat you the second round, beat Ty the third round, lost all 3 game ones, brought in 11 cards.
Yeah, his sideboard was two warmth, 2 cop red, 3 blue blast, 2
hydroblast,
2 powder keg, or like 1 powder keg, like 1, just like other cards that are like kind of mid, but like better than Factor Fiction.
To be fair, he had Circle Red and Warmth in play against both you and Ty.
6 times. Just like
no, not against me.
Oh, okay.
I beat him in game 1. He had 2 Warmths and a Circle Red.
Oh, okay.
And I almost won. He needed the second Warmth.
But anyways, Heroes, still managed to squeak into the top 8 at 3-1-1. Michael J, of course, had
I lost
continued.
a tie in the last round because Lanny's deck has too many cards that can't be sided out in the mirror match, and I drew them all in the sideboarded games.
Yeah, I mean, here's my conclusion. I think that Sulfuric Vortex Burn is the better burn deck against other decks and not against itself. And so if you were to follow that reasoning, you would basically say it's like, oh, if there's a lot of burn in your meta, then you kind of have to adjust down on Vortex. But like I got people with Vortex all day. Like every single time I cast Vortex, I won, except for, of course, when my opponent had both Warmth and Cop Red. But one of my opponents just had Warmth. So he was just like Warmth. And I was like,
I beat the same opponent.
I was like, I'll play Sulfuric Vortex. And then he was like, Trigger. And I was like, that's the last one you're going to get.
We exchanged our round 1 and 2 opponents.
No. I'm talking. Oh, I forgot actually.
Yeah,
so we played
blue white decks.
No. I'm talking about the player who was playing 5 color weenie. Had Warmth, Enlightened Tutor, Warmth, and then also Enlightened Tutor for Worship.
You played the first 4 turns of game 3 so well. And then
just threw it all
horrible.
Yeah.
But like you got him good.
I guess got to the spot where I needed to, right?
Yeah,
so I got the ball rolling down the hill.
The first 4 turns were gorgeous. I'm like, oh, does he see it? Like you have to play pretty elegant to get there, right? And then
it was actually a moment.
Silver Knight Worship. Yeah. You got it, and then
So what Mike is describing was actually a burn puzzle. If you can believe that burn has puzzles, to all the haters. Where basically my opponent, has some cards in hands. I have like something like a Grim Lavamancer or whatever on the table. They're operating on a pretty high life total. And I have a hand that's like, I have like my hand going into their turn 4 is Mountain.
I'm going to help you. This comes from years of podcasting with Chapin, where you're telling this long, convoluted story, okay? The opponent uses a card to put Worship on top of his deck. Lanny knows it's coming, and there's a Silver Knight already in play. Lanny navigates it so that his opponent uses all of his resources to get the Worship in play, and plays Curse Scroll, uses the Curse Scroll, kill the Silver Knight all in one turn, and then has basically an insurmountable lead, right? That's basically what you're trying to get.
Yeah. It's like I had choices to do a bunch of things that were not that. Run out the curse scroll in time, use my mana differently.
No. But then you would have gotten like a seal or something and answered your curse scroll, right?
Exactly.
Instead, you had you rope-a-doped him into the same as how I play Marvel Snap these days. And I mean, I've just farmed the 8 cubes every time. It's like people have never heard of Valkyrie and Dazzler.
Oh my
God.
God.
Like they have like, snap back. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. Like your Green Goblin and Hood are about to have 3 power. They're like, wait, what just happened? Like they have the what just happened emote. I have 12 power where I had -9 a second ago. And they're like, oh no, I didn't plan for that. I know you didn't plan for that. Nobody knows what Dazzler and Valkyrie do with.
All right. I'm officially banning Marvel Snap detours from this podcast, and not for the reason that you might think. All right. I'm banning them. What is
the reason?
I'm banning them because if people listen to this podcast and they're like, oh, Marvel Snap, that sounds like a fun game. Like, I want to jump into that and see what Mike and Laney are talking about. They will not have an experience in Marvel Snap, anything similar to us for an entire year.
Yeah. You need to. I couldn't do this. Laney taught me how to use my spotlight keys.
It's just
I have so many alternate art bad cards.
So
I would just click spotlight key whenever I got one.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Marvel Snap is kind of a nifty game. It has some cool mechanics. It has kind of like this betting mechanic. The games go really short. It uses a Marvel IP. It's a really fun game. It's pretty complicated. I'm an order of magnitude better at the game than Mike is, but Mike's very proud of himself in this particular moment. And the game progression is impossible if you don't spend money on it, or you didn't start playing like a year and a half ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years. Like, you know, the way you acquire cards is so like glacially slow, and like the experience of the game before you like have lots of cards is like you're supposed to enjoy not having lots of cards. But the thing is, that means that Mike and I can't talk to you about Marvel Snap because we'll basically be playing two different games.
You'll be like 3 months in before you have Sunspot, right? Like that's the thing.
It'll be
Sunspot's just a basic good card to own.
Yeah, it's kind of tragic how like that social element isn't there. So anyways, that's the last you'll hear of Marvel Snap on this podcast.
You're only one order of magnitude better than me, but my current win rate is just astronomical.
Yeah,
so,
but you know, just imagine that, but like against opponents who know what they're doing. You know, it's kind of like when we play Magic. You know, it's kind of
who's gonna be infinite faster this season? I'm pretty close already.
The speed at which you get infinite doesn't matter because you encounter bots on the ladder. Anyways, this has been a long. It's not.
This is a long digression of Marvel Snap.
Well, you keep feeding the fire. I just said it was banned.
I want to talk about the Easter Championships. The first thing I notice is the champion is wrong. Shouldn't it? Is it just? I thought caffeinated always wins the Easter Championship, and you start with number 2.
Oh, that's a good point. Of course, Aaron Dix decided to graciously step aside so that others could play, and instead we had a mono blue mirror in the finals between John Jong, and Marcus Eovaldi. Tide control against Mono Blue Storm. So Marcus Eovaldi, also known as Truckus, also known as I Would Like to Respond, is a storm god. He's one of the titans of High Tide combo in Legacy.
Wait, he's a storm god?
Yeah, he's a storm god, like Thor or Storm.
Whoa.
Yeah, and
does he have like a magic hammer?
He's like he's got a magic hammer that lets him draw high tides. Of course, we have some poor excuses for high tides in the form of Sapphire Medallion and Helm of Awakening in our format. But he took Storm all the way to the finals, where Tide Control was finally able to get him, due somewhat in part to a little bit of a misunderstanding about how dangerous the card Parallax Tide is, because he's only played the format a couple of times.
All right, so is this 8 different archetypes in the top 8?
That's what I read. And top to bottom, we have Tide Control, Mono Blue, Storm, Draco Blast, Burn, Parallax Replenish, Land Still the Rock, and Elves. I think we should just run through these decks because like this is wild, right? A, there's 8 different decks, and B, the top 3 decks are all badonkadonks. Yeah, they are they are what we would call tier 2 and below decks. In fact,
no. I wouldn't say that. I'm using the word badonkadonk.
If you asked me, if you told me actually that Mono Blue Tide, Mono Blue Storm, and Draco Blast were gonna 1, 2, 3 a Swiss event in pre-modern, I would have said you were let's be fair. Like, sometimes these decks are the decks that are like, oh, Storm made a top 8, and you'd be like, oh, that's crazy, Storm made a top 8. It's like the finals.
First of all, I like Draco Blast, and I mean, it's my fault that Rebel went on her weird like Black Knight kick or whatever, because I just gave her David Daniels deck, and she's just like, oh, this is gas, but then she just didn't have the cards for it IRL, so then she just started playing like Black Knights and Flame Tongue Cavus. But I like that deck, and I think I'm going to collect it, but I need to get good Hypnotic Specters. But I'm going to collect this deck, and I'm going to play it and probably be upset after playing it, but I'm still going to collect it.
All right. Well, let's take it top to bottom. In first place, John Jong playing Tide Control. This is a mono blue deck that basically uses the interaction between Parallax Tide and either Chain of Vapor or Stifle to pick up 5+ of your opponent's lands.
It's like a one-sided semi-Armageddon, basically.
Chain of Vapor also gives you 2 bites at the apple, as well as picking up, if you want to copy it, another copy of your opponent's something. So it's a pretty nifty deck. You get this like gigantic tempo swing, and you normally close out with man lands in the form of 4 Fairy Conclave and 4 Mishra's Factory. The rest of it is mono blue control, super loaded up on counterspells, notably 4 Force Spike. Tying the room together.
Yeah,
if you're gonna Tide,
Randy Bueller 1998 action.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna Tide, you might as well Spike. For selection, we have 3 Factor Fiction for Impulse. The other counterspells are 4 Counterspell, 3 Mana Leak. There's 2 Standstill in here because you got a fair amount of man lands. We have a Nivernal's Disc and a Powder Keg as our mono blue options to control the board and the sideboard. Annuls, Blast, Chills, Dominate, which we love. Hibernation, Hydro Blast, and Tormod's Crypt. This is a deck that friend of the podcast, Eddie the Intern, played in many varieties. Eddie the Intern electing to play like Palancrons and Cunning Wish, but this deck is like way more straight ahead. And yeah, I mean, what do we think about Mono Blue Tide?
So let's run through this. So 2 Standstill. Like you said, there's a Fairy Conclave, Mishra's Factory action. I would love to see additional standstills somewhere. This seems like an okay standstill deck to me. It
has more man lands than blue white.
Yeah, that's why I want to see more standstills.
Yeah, and you, I don't think you would play days when you're trying to make your way to 5 to execute your combo.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's no days. There's Force Spike instead, right? Force Spike is the rich man's days, like I don't know which one is rich and which one is poor. So I think this. So I guess you can stifle lands. That's pretty good, right? Somebody like breaks their Flooded Strand. You can stifle it to kind of mana screw them. That helps along your Dust Bowl. Helps you. That's a good setup for your Standstill. Obviously, you can take all the counters off your Parallax Tide and then stifle the Fading trigger the next turn. The Leaves Battlefield trigger. Anyway, so I don't know. This deck seems like it's awesome against the Rock, horrible against Burn, can't possibly lose to midrange. Like the more midrangey decks than the Rock are just even worse.
Well, this beat Burn in the quarterfinal or the semis, so there you go.
Seems horrible to me. But I guess if you're just
3 Blue Blast, 2 Chill,
it's not even enough.
And
I'd love to play against this deck.
Isn't this always? Even with isn't this? But when we were playing a fair bout of Replenish versus Burn, Parallax Tide does a ton of work in that matchup.
Yeah, but the Replenish deck had a lot of advantages that this deck didn't have.
I understand, but it replaces
Mox and City of Traders.
Well, the thing is, this is able to bridge that gap by just playing a counterspell game. It's like 4/4 spike against burn, right? So think about
Counter
it.
spells are terrible against Jack. I mean, 4 spike's not even good against Jackal Pup.
I mean, for like setting a little bit of that aside, because I think this deck has, like, Jackal Pup has the most game against this deck, but the rest of it can at least be held back. And Jackal Pup, like, if you control the face burn that's coming, and then you can tide your opponent, like, again, burn tends to operate on, like, tends to not draw that many lands, and tends to not want to have to draw lands, right? So, like, if you're in a late game situation, like, you want to be able to tap your lands to cast multiple spells instead of, like, tapping your lands to get a few spells in and then having to, like, wait to draw more lands. In the meantime, Jackal Pup can be held back by 2 Quicksand, 4 Mishra's Factory, and 3 Powder Keg if you don't have any lands.
I'm not in love with Quicksand against Jackal Pup in this format, but
if you're under, I mean, if you're under chill and if you're blasting.
Clearly he won. Okay, so I'm not discounting that. When I say it's horrible against burn, doesn't mean it's not a negative win percentage or something, right? You can win 1 out of every 100 matches, and that was the one that
he's suiting up. He's suiting up with 11 counter spells and a way to stop the burn player from finding further advancement. And then after sideboarding, that becomes 14 counter spells. So the way that I see this going is that the early game, they're pretty good at suppressing your offense. Like, at least you have Blast for a Jackal Pup. If you ever get Chill down, you're in a great spot. And then after the suppression's done, they blow up all your lands and then take the driver's seat. Like, I mean,
do you even leave Parallax Tide in your deck after sideboarding?
Absolutely.
Oh my god, that is such a terrible card.
Opponent's deck contains Curse Scroll, and, like, the only scary thing that they can do to you is Sulfuric Vortex, which players for some reason haven't been playing.
You just tap 4 mana to cast Parallax Tide, and they Pyroblast you, and then you're dead.
I mean,
I would love it if my opponent played 4 mana to cast that card.
I think that it's got to be closer than you're saying, because, like, I just see this as, like, a reverse philosophy of fire thing, where it's like, okay, well, they can use all their spells. Like, the great advantage of the burn deck is that it's converting spells for damage. Like, this deck can convert spells for life pretty effectively, compared to decks that burn is, like, preternaturally, like, already good against.
I feel like I don't know how to say this. I can't even imagine a deck I would rather play in game 1 than this deck if I were playing burn. Like, to me, this seems like the easiest matchup. I don't even think I would get a burn spell countered, right? So, like, when I wrote the 3 gears and I just talked about inevitability plays and, like, landing,
I understand.
Spells,
okay, like, I'm going to stop you right there.
This is exactly the kind of
you
deck
can hang
where
if you want to hang back. If you want to
spells.
hang back, then the blue player can hang back, and then they just tide you.
No, they don't, because you're hassling them with you're hassling them with cards that cost too little mana to be countered to begin with, like Jackal Pups, Mog Fanatics, and Grim Lavamancer. You just can't just sit there, right? Like, they're gonna die to 2/1s if they just try to sit there, because none of their stuff impacts the battlefield except for Nevinyrral's Disc is horrible. You can't just, like, tap. You're just dead if you tap 4 for Nevinyrral's.
Yeah, but all of the cards that you named cost 1 mana. This is running 3 Powder Keg, and, like I said, it's got 4 Factory, 2 Quicksand.
Clearly, like I said, he won, right?
Yeah, Mike, I'm addressing your point. I'm not trying to use the results against you. I'm literally addressing your point. You're trying to say that you're going to get leverage with your 1-drops, and I'm like, okay, well, we can go even on that with Powder Keg, Quicksand, and Mishra's Factory. Like, if you don't think that you're going to get if you're going to hang back and not cast your spells, then you're going to have to cast it into the Mishra's Factory that's blocking, right?
No. So I actually will remind you, when we were at the 1K and we were looking at a battlefield, and there was the invincible blue-white player had a Powder Keg in play against Ty. You're like, oh, I don't like that. It's kind of sauce. And I'm like, I actually think it's pretty good. It's always going to get some value. We're on opposite sides of the argument here. I actually think Powder Keg has text, but you're going to take 6 before the Powder Keg gets any value, right? Like, your life total is pressured by things that your counter spells can't interact with, right? Like, that's the problem. Like, well,
the thing, all I'm saying
is an invitation to dealing 4 damage.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that might be right, but if that's the only damage that's going to come through, like, if you're in control of the game, and the only damages that come through, like, you only have to worry about the battlefield, and you don't have to worry about the stack. Like then the burn player can do 17 damage or 19 damage, and then you can take it the rest of the way. Notably, this deck doesn't take any damage from its mana base, so the burn player has to deal the full 20. Aside from that, like every single card in this deck is live. Like it doesn't like because the card draw is low to ground. The heaviest spell in the deck is obviously this disc, which I agree is bad, but which is Parallax Tide, which gets its money pretty much the moment that you cast it. I think it's probably and obviously if you like ever land a chill, like just chill plus mana suppression, like we know how that goes.
Yeah, so obviously he has tools. It's obviously not a negative percentage matchup. I'm just saying, like, great job, John, winning the match and then ultimately winning the Easter Championship. I'm just saying, if we were going to take this to the lab, I would be very happy to give you odds from the. All right,
we'll put it on your tab for the money match docket.
Anyway, cool deck. I'm glad a deck like this can perform. It's exciting. It's inspiring. One of the decks that I was brewing myself for LobsterCon last year, obviously didn't play it, was going to be Tide Control that had either like a Rainbow of Freet finish or hybridized into 12/12. I mean, there's some good crossover on Stifle there. I like that. That's a thing that people can try to do. I think I would.
People have tried. I've seen a lot of Stifle not tied lists, and I think that the code remains to be cracked.
Half your deck is good against half the field. The other half of your deck is good against the other half of the field.
I mean, that's the idea, but I've yet to see this being demonstrated in real time. But moving on, in second place, like I mentioned, Marcus Iovalde playing Storm. This is just stock Storm with a couple of changes. Accumulated knowledge in the card draw slot that's normally taken up by selection, like sleight of hand and impulse. Marcus is going for bulk instead of selection, and 2 attunements which he shared were no good, and he would rather have some arcane denial main in order to battle against these parallax tides, or just more things to address. Of course, there's been rumblings that Storm is back on the menu ever since the Premier Guy's Blessing deck in the format is no longer played. I think that while that is true, the deck has always seemed very weak to me. And then
Storm,
I played 4 matches with it today. I made a couple changes. I just put some like bounce spells in the main. Like what I do, I had 1 Flash Insight, 1 Rushing River main over the attunement, and then just kind of tweak the sideboard. And this deck is awesome. I like won on turn 3 twice.
I've always thought this deck was awesome. So I played against Avery. Played it at the Sacred Torch 1.5K we had last year, and I beat him obviously because I was playing.
Yeah, you had Guy's Blessing. He ran into Guy's Blessing twice.
I bought all the cards for this deck. My objection to the deck is that you can never beat Guy's Blessing, and like I don't even know if there's any way to beat Guy's Blessing.
What do you mean? You just play 3 copies of Words of Wisdom.
I mean, stuff kind of has to happen in the order that you need it to happen.
No, you play 3 copies of, or actually, no, you actually only need 1 copy of Words of Wisdom. I got that wrong. So you play, the Words of Wisdom copies don't matter. It's your Brain Freeze copies. So if your opponent has Guy's Blessing and you have 1 Words of Wisdom, you just Brain Freeze until they bless, respond to the bless trigger with Brain Freeze until they bless again, and then respond to that blessing trigger with your final Brain Freeze, and then you force them to draw a card.
So you need to have all your. You need to have 1 more Brain Freeze than they do. They have Guy's Blessing. So in your hand.
Well, yeah, but you've drawn your deck if your opponent's playing Guy's Blessing and they don't do anything.
They might kill you.
They typically don't when they're playing a Guy's Blessing deck. Like they'll give you enough time to.
No, but this deck doesn't have any counter spells. They might just cast Azur's Weirding.
No, you would just. I mean, you have the arcane denials and the more like bounce out of the sideboard.
So I mean, but are we in agreement that you're gonna lose game 1? Like that's okay. So you're gonna lose game 1, and they might have something to say about something, right? Like those decks often have an overload of, call it, Aura of Silence, Seal of Cleansing. They can kind of punch your Helm of Awakening, and make you play a game of Magic. Like, also, what if they just, Enlightened Tutor for Arcane Lab, right? The deck that Rich used to win the monthly.
Yeah. Arcane Lab is obviously really good against Storm. I would say that it really kind of depends on like the list and the forms of resistance and when they get drawn. So you have access to Arcane Denial out of the sideboard, and you have access to time. So you can generally sculpt your hand to a point where you just throw all your stuff against their stuff and see who has more. I actually don't mind, like, this Storm deck generally thrives if it's put in a position where it's like draw go. Like, I'd rather battle against like whatever like hates you to describe than meddling mage naming meditate.
I like I said, I like this deck. I think that it's cool. It's like one of the first decks that I explored when I played in the format. I played against it in the Day 2 tournament at LobsterCon back in 2022. I do like the strategy. I think it's very powerful, but this is just like hyper emblematic of a deck that, in my opinion, concedes a lot of agency. And that there's just there's a wide variety of cards that maybe are not all popular, but in some are very popular, right? That can kind of get you. And those cards include everything from Arcane Lab to Sphere of Resistance to I played against this deck when I played Red Green Oath Peluche at a meetup, and I was able to easily lock it out with Mana Control and Sphere of Resistance. Red Blasts are good against it. Then obviously a Red Blast isn't going to beat you by itself, right? But a room full of Red Blasts, Arcane Labs, Gaia's Blessings, etc., like spread across the room, is very difficult for this deck to answer any of those things, let alone all of them, because they're all different, right? So, I think like if you're going to play a short tournament, or you're going to, let's say all of your opponents are all black-white control. It's probably a fantastic deck. You could probably never lose.
Yeah, you can just cast Meditate. Marcus cast Meditate against his landstill opponent just so many times. He just got away with it every single time. Just like, I'll cast Meditate on your end step.
It's cute that you drew 3.
Take another turn.
Yeah, like, it's super cute. I totally get it. Like, there's just like a wide variety of things that you could literally ignore, right? Like a deck with like 4 accumulated knowledge, frantic search, meditate, and merchant scroll. Like, try beating this deck with the rock. It's just not gonna happen. Right? Like,
although I will say, I'm just like cursed against Fran because he was playing Machine Head, black red Muse, I guess, with Skeletal Scrying, and he got me with the. We went to 3 games and he got me with like the Scrying into Haunting Echoes beatdown, and it was still at least close, but it's hard to play this deck with no. It's hard to play.
You lost the Mano dot deck.
I mean, it's Frano dot deck. I think Skeletal Scrying was kind of huge because basically, game 1, he just got under me and I like couldn't put it together because like he had like double Cabal Therapy, like plenty of discard to just like keep me down. Like I cast Meditate for value twice, and he was like kept up with the value through Cabal Therapy, which is pretty impressive.
Was it on camera?
Yeah, it's actually on camera.
Of course, you're never gonna win.
It's on. Yeah, it was on camera both sides actually. The curse
0% chance. The
curse continued.
Like Lanny's just like, that's just Chinese for buy, right? What was your pairing this round? Oh, it's Lanny. 1-0. Got it.
He's the Kibler to my Finkel. What can you say? But in any case, Skeletal Scrying was some interesting tech, but you'll see that in the upcoming Fran video when he releases all
3 hours of your Growatog video on Sunday.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that after we're done talking about Easter. But I think accumulating knowledge is actually really sick in this deck. Like
Shouldn't this deck have intuition?
Well, it just doesn't really like have the space for it, and intuition. I mean, for like, AK under
just cut some attunements.
I would be down to cut 2 attunements for intuition. I kind of like playing. I like playing Flash of Insight in this deck. It's just like Demonic Tutor that you pitch to 1 mana Demonic Tutor that you pitch to Frantic Search while you're going off.
Wow!
It's pretty
imagine
good.
You had intuition in your deck. Wow, you're right.
Well,
That would be great.
the nice thing about you know, like this deck outside of the attunements is that it's super lean. So like the intuitions, like also, like I don't think intuition AK is like that impressive when you're storming off, because it's 2 mana to draw 3, so it doesn't really go that hard. And then you're like notably are taking redraws out of your deck. But
you're taking redraws out of your deck in exchange for winning.
Well, I'm just saying it's just not that much gas.
All right, so I think Intuition's gas in this deck because you have Sapphire Medallion and Helm of Awakening. This seems to me exactly the kind of deck that I would want Intuition for 1 or 2 mana.
I mean, I think that it's you pretty much. I mean, I don't know. I think that like when I was playing, like I wanted to put Intuition in this deck too, but I wouldn't have put Intuition unless you have like a second thing to get, because you pretty much are always Intuitioning for AK. Like, or if you're like really pressed, you have to Intuition for rocks. But other than that, like I said, cool. I don't think 2 mana draw 3 is like a high enough ceiling for Intuition. Like I'd be down for Intuition for triple deep, and then you can play the grindy game if you have to.
Oh, wow. Lanny finding another reason to cast Deep Analysis. News at 6.
But that actually goes harder, right? Because then for, you know, your investment, you can like generally speaking, the game goes later, you have excess mana and you're just trying to turn that into cards, and then Deep Analysis just grinds a lot harder than Accumulated Knowledge. Like it's just one shot. It's just one shot to spend. Even if you're spending 2 mana to draw 3, it's just like a one shot. And you know, the AKs get there on their own a lot of the times. Like, you know, you're kind of busted every time you drew 2 AKs too. Then all of a sudden where you have to like Intuition for Meditate. And then that actually hurts to take all the Meditates out of your deck. Because then
all of these seem better than having Attunement in my deck.
Yeah, but I cut the attunements for Flash of Insight and a singleton Rushing River because I didn't want to lose.
Can we play 3 Brain Freeze? Like, we don't need 4 Brain Freeze.
I'm actually drawing multiple Brain Freezes is like a very easy way to win. Like I had a game earlier.
Multiple.
I had a game earlier where I just was under Winter Orb and I just did Fairy Snap, Fairy Snap, Fairy Snap, Freeze, Freeze, and I think the Brain Freezes are pretty. Are pretty live in multiples. I mean, I get wanting to do 3, but your kill normally, you like to involve your kill with 2, like especially because like what ends up happening is you don't draw your deck, you just draw like most times you go off, you don't draw your deck. Like most times you go off, you draw like 20 cards. And so you need 2 Brain Freeze in those 20 cards. And if you have 3, that's a lot less likely to happen. I mean, obviously Merchant Scrolls count as extra copies, but
I'm down for this deck. I like it. I think it's cool.
It feels great. I won on turn 3 twice, and one time it was on accident. Like on turn 3, I just was like, I'll play like a rock. I'll play Frantic Surge
on turn 3 against. Surprisingly, there's 2 decks that you can't try to go off on turn 3 against. One of them's Tide Control, and one of them's Dreadnought. So those are 2 decks that you literally can't try to go off fast.
I really like your Dreadnought matchup, though.
Do you like getting your Brain Freeze stifled?
I mean, I think that they have to go.
You just lost, by the way.
They have to go first, and I have 4 Brain Freezes, which we just discussed.
Yeah, but like you're just like sitting there's like Island Go or whatever, and then you're just like go off, and like they just let you spend a bazillion cards. They're just like
no. It's the other way around. Like you let them spend their cards because they have to. Like this is what always happens with like a blue combo deck versus Dreadnought deck. It's like the Dreadnought deck has to spend their resources on their combo and stopping your combo. So they can't let you go off because obviously you'll just draw enough Brain Freeze. But like Dreadnought brings in Brain Freeze for the mirror. Like this is literally a Dreadnought deck post sideboard for the Dreadnought mirror.
Yeah, but that's like spurious because the reason is that both decks are so good at removing specifically Dreadnought. You just need to have another angle of attack. And I that's interesting though that it doesn't come down to stifles against Brain Freezes more often. But I'm not saying that I think the Dreadnought deck is at the advantage. I don't have any data to support that. I would guess it's at the advantage because it has counterspells. But I'm just saying I don't like the idea of just trying to go off fast against them. I think you're very
but you wouldn't
liable to
go
lose
off
to Stifle.
fast. Like this is a combo deck, Mike. Like you just
if
go off the turn before you would lose. Like this is like a very classic blue draw go combo deck.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm Dreadnought and I'm just like, I mean, blue-white Dreadnought actually has to be a phenomenal matchup, right?
Blue-white Dreadnought's going to be a lot better.
Can't I just Meddling Mage Brain Freeze?
You would Meddling Mage naming Meditate.
Why
Mike, you're so bad at this game. Jesus.
Why would I not name Brain Freeze?
Because this deck runs 4 Snap main deck, and then it can bring in whatever it wants. So the first Meddling Mage, if you want, you can name Snap, because Snap is one of the good answers against Dreadnought. But if you weren't going to name Snap, you would name Meditate, because this deck effectively has a hard time going off without. But like, just imagine the scenario where you're just like present Dreadnought, and you're like, okay, like, you know, light counter war, a couple spells go back and forth. Eventually, I have a Dreadnought, and they're like, okay, end of your turn, Brain Freeze you for like, 21, right? And then on my turn, like, I'll untap, and then I'll start playing spells. And it's like, if your plan is Stifle, I'll probably have enough Brain Freeze, and you'll probably have drawn deeper into your deck that I can just like, either just like bounce your Dreadnought again, and then we can just like play this whole thing again.
Yeah, I think like bouncing the Dreadnought is a thing, but I just have a hard time imagining losing from the Dreadnought side if I went first. I just, like, I can imagine losing if I went second, but like if I go first, like, I literally was just going to combo you on turn 2, force you to have the snap. I'm just going to like daze your rock, and then I'm going to kill you. Right? Like, because if I daze your rock on turn 2, you're literally dead.
Yeah, but you're describing,
I'm describing some cards that are in my deck.
You're describing the Dreadnought range, which is like turn 2 jam on the play with protection, which beats everything. Like, it beats literally everything. Yeah. So
beats everything. That's why it's good.
I don't really know what that says about Storm, rather, like, if it says anything about Storm. That just says something about Dreadnought. It just says that Dreadnought can draw the nuts.
No, I'm just saying, like,
you're just saying that Dreadnought can draw the nuts.
No, you're describing a deck that you think is good against Dreadnought. I don't think it's that good against Dreadnought. I think it might be okay.
Mike, your counterpoint is saying that Dreadnought's going to beat you if it jams turn 2 on the play with protection, in which it beats all decks, right?
Okay,
what if my whole game my kings can't beat aces. They beat every other hand. Like, they can't beat aces, but they beat every other hand in poker. Like, my bad.
I just feel like if you is meditate an additional cost, or it's only if it resolves.
It's only if it resolves.
Only resolves, yeah. I mean, you're pretty vulnerable to daze. Like, even if they don't have like the nuts draw.
Okay, we're too divergent on this. I
don't think it's worth testing.
I find you like extremely like unaware of like the patterns for the Storm deck. So I'm just gonna like leave it at that.
I guess I've played this deck more than you.
I mean, I don't know how you have it so wrong. I just don't know how
I think this is a classic case. You remember when I told you like I didn't know about you didn't know about Izzet sequences. Yeah. I think that you think you know more sequences than me, but like
I would like to see you play this deck. Then
I played this deck in a Grand Prix.
I would just like you to see this play this. I would like to see you play this deck in pre-modern. I'd like to watch over your shoulder and watch you play this deck and watch you I don't know. I don't know what you would do. It'd be a good learning experience.
I'm not saying I have I'm not saying all my mile in it for this deck is like super clean right now. Like, I don't remember sequences for standard decks or for draft that I was good at a month ago. But I'm saying I think I have played this more than you is my guess.
I think I understand this deck's function more than you. Like, I understand how it would play into the metagame, like, because I just play more, man. Just come on.
All right, man.
I beat Dreadnought with Devourer. Like combo over combo with resistance, like whatever. It's like you can also just add defense grid to your sideboard. It's like it just like make things.
Yeah, but that's different. The other thing that is kind of bad is Helm of Awakening is very helpful for the Dreadnought.
You would never cast. This is why you don't understand.
It's in your deck.
You would never cast it until the turn you're trying to. This is why you don't understand the matchup, because the Storm player would never run out the Helm Awakening before the turn you go.
All right, so the Storm player's likelihood of having a snap in their hand in the first 4 turns of the game is under 50%. They might just be dead, Lanny. Like, that's the thing. They have no way to stop the Dreadnought. They can just snap the Dreadnought when it actually happens. If they don't have the snap already, they literally die.
Right.
Like, I don't understand why. Like, that's not a hard thing to conceptualize.
No, I mean,
that's math. That's not like strategy.
That's not true. And you get enough dig, and then you also have more than 4 turns unless they turn 2 jam on the play with protection. It's like this is a game, and like the same thing is true for the Dreadnought player. Okay, in 50% of the games, the Phyrexian Dreadnoughts and the Enabler are not in the top 20 cards of the Dreadnought player's deck. Like this is where all the games with Dreadnought happen. That aren't the games where you jam on turn 2. You said it yourself. You took out cantrips from your deck so that you could dig shallower with Sabo's Web because you wanted to play more turns.
I only lost to you.
If you're the Storm player,
stupid Shazam deck.
You're the Storm player and your opponent wants to play more turns. Generally speaking, you hitting land drops, you being able to sculpt is going to favor you over your opponent because your deck is more linear. You commit fewer resources into your like fundamental turn. Like your Dreadnought opponent already has to put down 2 spells, and you're like talking like you're gonna trump with Stifle. It's like, well, if Stifle is in your hand and that's your enabler for Dreadnoughts, like then you just don't have it. Like, so I'm just saying that Mono Blue Storm like has Dreadnought covered on all the slow games, and then post sideboard, you just play the Mono Blue against Mono Blue. The only thing that actually matters, the only thing that I accept that makes this matchup difficult is if your opponent 1 has a brain and 2 drew Meddling Mage. Some opponents like Michael J might not have a brain, and they would just be like, "Oh, what do you kill me with? Oh, Brain Freeze. Okay, I'll name Brain Freeze."
Naming Brain Freeze,
and then I would proceed to like draw 20 cards, like snap your Meddling Mage for mana profit, and then Brain Freeze you.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like naming Brain Freeze is fine. I feel like naming Snap is not particularly better than naming Brain Freeze, considering the fact that you can just kill me with Brain Freeze without ever casting a Snap.
Yeah, that's correct. Meddling Mage, like the second copy, does a lot of more mileage, and then most importantly, naming Meditate is much more likely to work out. Like if you name Brain Freeze, then you're waiting until like Brain Freeze is the last spell they cast, right? You should name the first spell they cast, which tends to be Meditate. And if it's not Meditate, you can at least 50-50 against a Helm of, or against Sapphire Medallion or a Helm, whatever's not in play.
You wouldn't name Sapphire Medallion
if they don't have one on the battlefield. If they don't have one on the battlefield and you get 2 Meddling Mages down, like one Meddling Mage,
you get 2 Meddling Mages down, you win.
You name Snap.
Right?
You name Snap.
You Snap and Brain Freeze, they're dead, right? They cannot win game 1. Right. Yeah. If that happens.
Oh, they wouldn't. That's not true against me. Like that's why. That's the thing is like,
because you have a Rushing River.
Yeah, I have a Rushing River. It's like that's the thing is like the Storm player only needs to add singular cards if your opponent wants to clamp down on specifically like wants to use Meddling Mage specifically for that purpose. So actually, like when I built this, I have 1 Rushing River main, I have 1 Rushing River side, I have a Hercules Recall side, and I have an Unsummoned side. So like I can bounce the Dreadnought.
No. So, but bouncing the Dread, I'm not worried about bouncing the Dreadnought. We're currently having a conversation about whether you're going to beat Meddling Mage.
Yeah. The Meddling Mage attacks are gonna be much more important.
Maximum 5 turns to draw the Rushing River against a deck that has 10 counter spells.
Why is it maximum 5? Do you know how to?
You're just dead to the attacker.
What's 5 times 2?
What's 5 times 4? We're talking about having 2 Meddling Mages in play.
Yeah, so then you have to go 2 into 1. You have to draw you have to draw like I do in the matchup and draw two Meddling Mages in your top 14.
Every time we played, you had all 4 Meddling Mages in the top 20.
Yeah, my deck has 12 1-mana cantrips. The current stock Dreadnought deck only runs 8 cantrips. Like you're right that the double Meddling Mage scenario is difficult for the Storm deck, but it's still a piece of material that has to hit the battlefield.
The more we talk about this, the more I feel like Dreadnought is advantaged, and I think that
all right, we'll add it to the money matchup. I guess we're just gonna be on the opposite side on every matchup here. Anyways, the Storm deck is pretty impressive to me. I think that its weakness is not decks that don't have particularly strong proactive game plans, like or I'll say that. The thing about Blue-White Dreadnought is that its proactive game plan is influenced very heavily by variance. So there is very much tape out there of our friend Fran playing Blue-White Dreadnought. A lot of times he just like doesn't see a Dreadnought and he like loses the game because he doesn't see a Dreadnought. And a lot of times he just like has the miracle draw and he just like has everything. It's just like Gush, Stifle, Dreadnought, like whatever. And the reason why you play Blue-White Dreadnought is because in the slower games you can get a lot more leverage out of Meddling Mage because the Mono Blue Dreadnought can have the same problem where it's just like
I'm not going to sign up to play Mono Blue Dreadnought in any matchup. So
yeah, but it's worth noting that the Mono Blue Dreadnought, like basically puts all its points in trying to solve for variance. Like just try to have less variance in the core combo than the blue-white deck does. But this Frantic Storm deck, like I think it plays. It's impressed me. Like I
started with I think the deck is good.
Yeah, but then you proceeded to like theorize a bunch of stuff about how it can never beat like certain situations. It was like
I didn't say it can never beat. I said a deck that you cannot do this into is the statement I made.
All right.
If you want to roll back the tape? Interestingly, we taped it, right?
Regardless,
I would say this. You can think whatever you want. My value ever on any teams was I understood how the matchups worked. That was always my value, and I'm still not wrong about that. I can still beat the Zoomers at their formats, at least predicting who's supposed to win which side. This deck is not good against Dreadnought. I'm not saying it's hopeless. It's not good.
I'm gonna have to run these odds just so that like I can make a little bit of money on the side. Like,
if you want to play evensies against me I'll play your red deck against the deck that won. I'll take that even all day. I don't know what odds you want. I would take it because I'm not losing very many games. What odds do you need the Dreadnought deck to have? It's just not a 50% matchup for Storm by any means.
I mean, if you think that Dreadnought's favored, then we can,
But you apparently think this deck is favored.
I mean, I think that this deck is. I mean, obviously Dreadnought's kind of broken, and also one weird thing is that I've never lost to the Storm deck except for once. I was actually. This is actually an interesting story time. The only time I lost to this deck, I was playing Grotog. So that's actually
a deck that is even better than Dreadnought against this deck.
Yeah, but that's why I was kind of surprised by it. If just name Meditate, and if you don't name Meditate,
I've never lost to this deck in pre-modern.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I've played it, and I only lost to Frank. You
just admitted you lost with Grotog, a deck that is even better than Dreadnought against this deck.
Yeah, but I mean, like I beat it every other time I saw it, so I just like never thought highly of it. And then I watched Marcus play it, and I was just kind of like, oh well, that's cool. Like, I mean, it's always occurred to me that the deck, like I beat this deck with a rock. They didn't have accumulated knowledge.
How?
It was like, duress, speeds, keep the rocks off the table. Like that's kind of what I always thought. I was just like, oh, you just like keep...
How many medallion type cards do you have in play the turn that you win typically? Do you play the second one the turn that you're going to try to go off? Is that kind of the...
You're asking a lot of questions for somebody who played this deck in Standard.
I'm asking you how many you
I thought you should know. What would you answer that question?
I don't know. I've never played the second pre-modern.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what's so annoying. Like, just, okay. What do you think the answer to that question is, though? I think
it very much depends on how long the games are. If you're talking about winning on turn 3 a bunch, you probably don't have a huge number of rocks in play, right? So
how many rocks do you think you need in play?
Need? I mean, you could have the Nutstraw. You could have 1 in play, and you can get a lot of excess mana with 1, right? Every single Cloud of Fairies, Frantic Search, and Snap is going to give you quite a bit of extra mana with 1.
All right, keep going.
I don't know. It depends what your draw is. This deck's a super variable deck. It's not like Dreadnought, you're like, okay, I'm going to lace together this card and this card. This deck, you can lace together all the cards you want and still maybe not win, right? Like, that's the nature of Storm combo decks.
I honestly think like you're gonna have to send me the list that you quote unquote played in Standard, like just so that I can see
I played it in Extended.
Okay, whatever the list that you quote unquote played in Extended, but you're misunderstanding of like the fundamental function of this deck. All right, well let's just like.
I mean, I was racing Dredge decks.
How many rocks? How many rocks do you think? How many rocks is a good number? What do you think?
I don't even understand your question.
Yeah, what's a good number of rocks?
8 is a good number.
No, 8's not a good number. What are you going to do with 8?
No, you're like, what is a good... I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, what's the root of your question? Which is just that...
I'm just asking, on the games that you win, how many rocks do you have in play? That's not a pointed question.
No, I'm asking you, like, to use your brain and tell me how many rocks you think you should have in play. I mean, it's a very easy question. It
literally depends on your hand. Like, if I look at my hand, I'm like, oh, I think I could win with 1 rock. Then I would try to win with 1 rock. Like, you see what I'm saying, right? Like,
No, because I play the deck. Like I only had to play it 4 times.
you're literally like someone who watches basketball, and you're just like, I saw
No,
this
that's
thing
you
happen.
right now.
I saw this thing happen, and so I think this.
That's literally
versus me, who like looks at the box score and explains.
Mike,
to
look
Pog
at the deck
that
list.
The reason that this team
Look
won
at the
is 'cause
deck list.
they got more rebounds.
Just look at the deck list and think. Just think for a second. What do you think the most like archetypal sequence is with the deck?
I mean, I think that you take very different lines depending on which matchup.
What's an
you're in.
example of the most common line? Your opponent's just playing elves. What do you do?
Oh, if they're playing elves, I'm going to try to go as fast as I can.
Okay, what does that look like?
What I don't know what my hand looks like.
What
like this deck
what do you
doesn't
think it
dictate
takes?
anything.
What do you think it takes to win on turn 3? Like if you open your hand, like okay, let's put it more simply, right? Okay, you're on the play against Fluctuator, and you open up your
I'm
hand.
Fucked.
Name
That's
7
what
cards. Name 7 cards that you think is an ideal starting hand.
Let me think for a second. And I'm playing against Fluctuator. I don't know, like Lotus Petal, Island, Cloud of Fairies. I want multiple meditates if I'm going to try to win against Fluctuator. So some version of multiple untaps. And I think, let's see, how I'm going to try to win. Am I on the play or the draw?
You have to be on the play, obviously. You can't win on the draw.
So I think I would only want 1 rock because if I'm trying to win that fast, I need to have more velocity. And I'm talking about my opening hand. I would want more Cloud of Fairies type things than mana rocks, and then I would want more ability to cast meditate type things than mana rocks, right? And that over the course of time, I might get some because I just drew 8 cards, but I don't necessarily want multiple in my opening hand. That's my analysis of that.
All right. The most likely way for you to win on turn 3 is to play a rock on turn 2 and play a rock on turn 3.
But I don't necessarily want it in my opening hand.
I mean,
right? Like,
if I were to describe an opening hand, I would say island, meditate, rock. Like that's
why don't I want a Lotus Petal? Lotus Petal's better than an island.
What would you do with the Lotus Petal?
Cast it.
When?
When I was going to try to win.
Oh my god. Okay.
It gives you Storm.
Listen to me. Oh my god. We're just gonna have to cut this from podcast.
I think it's hilarious. You think I don't know how to play a deck? Like the cards have to be in my hand. Like this, like the thing, like you're just like setting up a straw man. It's like ridiculous. Okay. I don't get to pick the 7 cards that I want.
Yeah,
that's not a thing I get to do.
I mean, I just feel like you I just feel like you don't understand. Like you're looking at it and like you just don't like. I feel like you don't know what the combo turns look like, and because of that, like you don't know like how it would play into control, how it would play in aggro, how it would play in combo, and then like you're just like making this judgment that's like does this and that.
The words you're saying don't make any sense. This deck doesn't dictate anything. If you are playing against control, you cross your fingers and hope you can make your land drops. Then you test spell them with cards like Meditate and hope they resolve, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And it depends on what your opponent's cards are because the control decks don't have that many counter spells. That's what dictates who wins. Right, like you're just like, oh, you play into control this. You play into control, however, your deck said you played into control.
Well, do you think you're more likely to? Do you think you're more likely to win or lose? Like if you're playing against control, draw go. Do you think you're more likely?
If I'm playing against what control deck?
Like Landstill, yeah.
I think I'm more likely to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I'm more likely to win for a bunch of reasons, and I think I'm very likely to win for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah,
mostly that they can't cast 3 counter spells in one turn. That's the main thing. Right. So but the thing is, I'm choked on stupid things in that matchup. Right. Like, what if I just don't draw 3 lands? What if I just don't draw 4 lands? Like, then it doesn't mean that I'm dead. Right. Because they take 1,000,000 years to win. But like, my game plan is predicated on me just like casting meditates and hope that they resolve once in a while. Right. Like that's the thing.
Versus yeah, but that's actually not true because like one of the big things that happens against control is that thanks to the fact that you have 4 brain freeze, like if you want to play a test spell game, you actually can and just chunk them with brain freeze, right? Because you only have to do how much? I mean, in your average game against Landstill, how many cards are they going to draw?
I mean, I don't know what the average game against.
What's the fastest Landstill can kill you? Let's just start. Let's just start there.
10 turns is generous.
All right, 10 turns.
That's generous.
So in a game of Magic, yeah. So how many cards do you think the Landstill player has drawn in those 10 turns? They've probably drawn like 25 to 30 cards, right?
I'm
just trying to calculate. Trying to calculate the deck damage.
I'm gonna revise my position. I think that against a contemporary land still deck, you're hopeless. I don't think you're gonna win.
Okay.
How does this deck beat a deck that just casts Arcane Denial with Counterspell backup?
So to be clear, Arcane Lab is obviously a trump.
No, but you're dead. Like the contemporary Landstill decks have 4 Meddling Mage, 3 Arcane Lab.
No, I mean that's Jesus Christ. You can't just say contemporary Landstill when nobody does that. Only all
Land
of doesn't even do that. Land doesn't even do that.
I got it from Land.
He had 1 to 2. He had like 1 to 2 Arcane.
We always had more.
What did you register at LobsterCon?
I didn't believe him at LobsterCon because I'm a fucking dumb.
What did Fran had? Fran had up to 2.
I've always played. I think 4+2. You're right. Maybe not 4+3, but 4+2. And the other thing is
Meddling Mage is like Meddling Mage is going in and out, and then
but it's just time, Lanny.
No, right? the disenchants. I understand. I'm just telling you that this deck is like relatively resilient to disenchant because you only need 2 in play and you have 8. Okay, and most of the time you only need 1 in play. Yeah, and if your opponent's giving you time, you only need to brain freeze them in like 1 turn here, brain freeze them for 20, another turn here, brain freeze them for 20.
So Lanny, I think that you're grossly misrepresenting what I'm trying to say here. This is like saying okay, people with a disability can overcome all odds and be very successful. That is true if you say it in a sentence, right? However, depending on your disability, every single day that you have is more difficult than a person who doesn't have that disability. So when you're playing against a deck, it's like, oh, I can beat a Meddling Mage. I believe you. I can beat a Seal of Cleansing. Yeah, probably could beat it like it wasn't even there. Can you beat all the Seal of Cleansings, all the Meddling Mages, Counterspell Backup, and Arcane Lab? That is a feat. That's the thing that I'm saying. It's like the preponderance of every single one of their cards. Yeah, they're like
Mike,
everything's 10 or better.
I was there when our Landstill opponent had 11 card sideboard against us. But they had the 11 card sideboard against us. Their sideboard would have sucked against Storm, and that's my point.
Okay, that's a fair statement.
Like if somebody's going to bring in 11 sideboard cards for your combo deck, you're never going to win, right? It's like if they're like 4 lane, 4 Graph Digger's Cage, 4 Surgical Extraction.
I don't know. I managed to have a bunch of cards in Hydroblast and a Circle Red. Like, I don't know. I've won the red matchup every time, so I didn't obviously have all the stuff that he had in play.
Well, what do you think of your average red opponent compared to you? Maybe they don't have 4 Sulfuric Vortex.
I beat one of Aaron's guys at LobsterCon playing red because he played a Sulfuric Vortex and then I played a Circle Red and I had some Hydroblasts in my hand.
Well, it sounded like your Aaron.
It was one of Aaron's guys and Aaron yelled at me for beating him.
Blundered Sulfuric Vortex.
And I was just like, it was one of those games where I was just like, oh,
all right.
This is going to be really annoying.
To revisit, don't cast Sulfuric Vortex into the Cop Red deck.
Unless they're also a Warmth deck. It's really, really confusing.
All right. Yeah. I mean, to be
you had
clear,
to have all the vortexes in, right? That's the.
I mean, to be clear, I'm sending the vortexes a lot of the time because they're gonna plow their Mishra's Factory and gain life. Okay, moving on to the next tier 3 deck that we're going to disagree strongly about because you probably think this Draco Blast deck is undefeatable, and I just don't see how it beats anything. Doesn't beat Brain Freeze. All Insidious Dreams you. It's like
I'm not a huge fan of this build.
Brain Freeze.
It's great that he made there.
All right. Draco Blast. We have Ritual Hippie. We have Insidious Dreams. Bolts Fire Xene Arena. 1 Scroll Rack. Man, Scroll Rack is only for cowards, right? You just got to believe you're not going to draw the Draco. We have 1 Scroll Rack.
It's a safety valve.
3 Mishra's Factory in the mana base. Classic black sideboard cards: Dystopia, Engineered Plague, Overload, 3 Blast, Shoreline Raider.
He must be an ex-champion. You know that's the rule of the Easter Championship.
They have to play the Shoreline Raider.
They have to play the Shoreline Raider.
Yeah, that's true.
He's an ex-champion then.
2 Torment Crypts and a Vendetta. I just watched this deck lose to the Storm deck. It was actually kind of fun because Marcus is new to the format, his opponent like casts Insidious Dreams and he's just like resolves. And then his opponent is like, he's like cast Insidious Dreams, pitch 2, right? He's like resolves. Okay. And then opponent's like, okay, find 2 cards, put them on top of my library, untap, draw. It's like cast erratic explosion targeting you. And Anton in the booth is just like, does he know? Does he know? Does he know? And then Marcus is just like, yeah, I'll brain freeze you. And then erratic explosion reveals the dark ritual. So.
Oh, savage.
So, obviously you would just sideboard out your Insidious Dreams. It's actually kind of sweet that I played against Fran, basically, because I know that Fran, let's just cosplay Fran right now. Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with another pre-mounted video. This time I just wanted to try a take.
Mengu or Fran?
Italian, Spanish accent. Actually, it's the same. I just
only Mengu says video.
We're all, that's the only way to say video now. Anyways, he's just like, I've seen, I hate ritual hippie. So I cut all the hippies and rituals, of course. And Insidious Dreams is just kind of a card disadvantage. I really like what Mano is doing. So I'm playing 4 Lava Burn Muse. We're playing Burning Wish and my new favorite card, Skeletal Scrying. So we're just trying to be grindier. Shout out to Lanny. I got Phyrexian Ragers in there, and we're just trying to be a good mid-range deck. Kind of like the tempo version of my black-white control deck that you might have seen recently. So anyways, I'll catch you in round 1. Oh, round 1, we got Lanny. This one's gonna be easy. Lanny starts on island. It's like, oh, okay, fine. Dress, Cabal Therapy. Oh, he casts Meditate. That's an interesting play. Therapy you again 1,000 more times. GG. Anyways, that's what to expect next time you log onto YouTube.
This was the saddest. That was the saddest 2 minutes I've ever heard. That was like the saddest complaining bad beat story I've ever heard.
I always lose to Fran.
Yeah, but you're just like bad beat stories are so boring, right? Like they always end the same way. I lost. Right?
Yeah.
Like they're never interesting.
It was interesting. Like, I don't actually remember what happened in game 3. I think I fizzled or something. But anyways,
oh really? You got all of your combo pieces and then you didn't go off? That's literally how Storm combo decks work.
Yeah. Regardless,
2-card combo decks don't ever do that.
2-card combo decks sometimes miss their combo. Like how was your run with Devourer, Mike? How did that go for you? That's a 2-card combo deck.
That was
what did it not ever do in your experience? Anyways, Draco Blast, kind of sweet. Insidious Dreams is a hell of a card to get counterspelled, but if it doesn't, 16's also a lot of damage. Yeah.
I'm not collecting this deck anymore. Those are like $16 a piece.
But yeah, no. Shout out to Mikhail or Michael. I don't know. Borg.
Is there anything interesting to say? He won. He must have won because he's got a Shoreline Raider. I just want to throw this out there because Tom does it. Fran does it too much. I think every single person who plays any number of Engineered Plague other than 4, like they play 3 Engineered Plague, are like some overlap of copium and just like. Not psychopathy, like so utter like they have like
so.
What is
so Mikhail over here is allowed to play 3 because he had to make room for the Shoreline Raider. But like anybody with non-Shoreline Raiders
with 3 Engineered Plague is like literally some number of copium or like Mike, copium is the nicest thing you can say.
What happens if you draw 2 though? What happens if you draw 2?
You crush your opponent.
But what if happens if you draw 3?
They really can't win.
And what if you're really unlucky and you drew all 4 copies of your Engineered Plagues?
If they weren't in your opening hand and they didn't just blind Cabal Therapy you, I think they're probably hopeless to win. But Lanny, what if you didn't draw any?
Oh, well, you probably lose.
You're probably dead. Right? Like I actually wrote a whole article after watching your Grow Talk thing because you're just like watching your internal debate about siding out like Counterspell and you're just like, I'm going to leave the Engineered Plagues against the Elves deck. Oh, you're such a genius. You're going to leave them in for the fake 4th game that you played? Like of course you would. They're fucking awesome.
Well, that was actually an interesting. I mean, we can pivot to that show notes. Pivot to Engineered Plague. Oh wow, we did 50 minutes on the Easter Champs.
on Magic. No, I want to get through all these decks. You could I guess think that I don't know how to play the basic things of a deck that has no ability to dictate its position, but
I mean, I don't know, it just wins. Like the baseline of the deck is that if you have 2 rocks in play, and you draw a lot of cards. Like, it's actually simpler than that. It's like most of the time you draw a lot of cards, you win. Like high tide combo decks. I mean, it's just a little different because you have Time Spiral in Legacy High Tide, but back when you just had like Solidarity, it was just kind of like, wait. Like, you remember Solidarity? It's just like damage on the stack, kill you, right?
Yeah, so the thing I would say about this deck is it's interesting because it technically has a bunch of library manipulation, right? So accumulated knowledge, frantic search, meditate, and merchant scroll, and I mean attunement is a miss.
Yeah, we're just assuming it's not there.
Yeah, but all these cards touch your library, but actually, basically all of them, with the exception of accumulated knowledge, are bad for just traditional Magic progression, right? Like if you think about like a deck like Groatog, which only has, what do you have, 17 land? Is that right?
Yeah.
17 land right now. So you have a 17 land deck, but you're excellent at progression because you have sleight of hand, op, stuff like that. Like this deck can just land 10s, right? Like, so if you're not like, you see what I'm saying? It just can't dictate anything. Yeah. It has like a shockingly low amount of agency for a deck with this much library manipulation. Like it can't just like impulse into a land. It's not in the range.
Yeah.
Right?
So I actually totally agree with that. And I think it's kind of an interesting, it's something that the deck designers, like the people who've worked on this deck, seem to go back and forth on. Like this AK slot basically is like AK or impulse. And I find that they're obviously good at doing two different things, but I was really impressed with just casting AKs and then merchant scrolling for more AKs in games where you have time. And then in games where you don't have time, like the AKs are kind of slow and sucky, but you do still have outs to loot them away with Frantic Search and make the later copies a lot more alive. So like, yes, you can conceivably be in a spot where your opponent's playing slow and you like don't hit your land drops, right? You're like on 18 lands and you need like 6 lands in play.
Do you like your red deck matchup with this, or do you dislike it?
Dislike, because if they put pressure into play and overload your rocks and blast your meditate, like you can't win fast without resolving meditate, right? So that's like a lot harder to do if they blast meditate.
Yeah, I like the red deck matchup, but it sounds like you've already like jumped ahead to sideboarded games. But I won this matchup at LobsterCon with the red deck 2 years ago, and I was basically dead, right? And I was stuck on one, I think, the entire game, and then he just
cast Helm of Awakening for no reason.
So I finally drew a second land. I'm like, I can't do anything because I have to leave up a red blast in case he tries to go off, right? So I finally draw a second land. I literally discarded a bunch, right? Because I just left up this red blast for the whole game while I'm like attacking with one Mog Fanatic or something, right? So then he's just like Helm of Awakening, and I'm like, cool, kill you.
Yeah, incinerate.
Yeah, like incinerate, fire blast, and he's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't have cast them.
Yeah, you should start. I mean, that's basically the thing that I'm more scared of is just like the red deck can they can just chip you and like blast and overload have pretty good overlap where it's like, our list has 4 blast, 4 overload, right? So they have like 8 spells, and if they draw 2, they can effectively stop you from storming, and it's not like too hard. I don't think it's still reasonable.
Do you just blast anything? Like, I'm just thinking about like, what would you blast?
I just blast meditate. You just sit there and wait to blast meditate because nothing happens.
Nothing else matters.
Yeah, nothing else matters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, you get like some people like maybe obviously this isn't right, but like you just go back and just like wait and blast the brain freezes. You're dead. That's terrible play. You can't do that.
That is correct.
I think I've blasted a Cloud of Fairies. So
I would blast a Frantic Search if they tap out for it. Like if their sequence goes like they have a rock, they play a rock, and then like if they untap on turn 3 and they have a rock in play, and then they go rock, and then they go Frantic Search, I would probably blast that Frantic Search. But even then, they can't get ahead unless they cast Meditate. So I would probably still think twice. I mean, it's like hard to say. Like I'd probably like Meditate just ties like Meditate is really the only way this deck just like completely accelerates into Stratosphere. And most of the time you're merchant scrolling for meditate during your combo turns, and during your not combo turns. I mean, that's why I really liked Marcus's build, because it's like, okay, well, if you're comboing, you just merchant scroll for meditate, and if you're not comboing, you merchant scroll for AK. And like merchant scrolling for AK is slow and horrible, but it's still card advantage.
Well, it depends when you're mad. Okay, if you're up against the rock, right? Like your limiting factor is how many rocks you expose to a pernicious deed, right? That's really like,
yeah.
So like, there's a tension between how many rocks you're going to
expose
to a pernicious deed versus cards in your hand that might get
let's just
there.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's just like, so to be clear to the listeners at home and to Mike, you only need 2 rocks in play because you don't have more than 2 generic mana in any of your cards. So that's thing number 1. So
you could play additional, like you could play a free Helm of Awakening for Storm. That's a thing that you can certainly.
I'm talking about like
how many you need.
What you need. Yeah. So you only need 2, and because you
only
only
need 2, you could win with 1.
You can win with 1, but it's a lot worse to win with 1 when your like Frantic Search doesn't full ritual. But I've won with 0, so I'm just saying that. And it, like also every like all the lands that you have in play lower your dependency on rocks, right? So like, essentially you just start out, you have your turn, you have whatever 6 mana. Every Cloud of Fairies is +1, every Snap is +2, and every Frantic Search is +1 or 2. And so you're just basically playing like a Ritual Storm deck, and your draw spells are Meditate and Accumulated Knowledge and Frantic Search. So basically you just kind of like start playing spells, and then you get to a certain amount. Your stops are basically like Brain Freezes and Merchant Scrolls. Merchant Scroll can be a ritual by getting Frantic Search. It can be.
I'm sorry. What do you mean by stop?
Like if you, I don't mean it in like the fluctuator sense. I'm just meaning like you're counting up your Brain Freezes, right? So obviously,
okay, because I was just like, there's lots of things that are stopped. Like
the
Island is stop.
Yeah, Island's actually effectively the only stop, but it's just I don't know. It's combo decks.
Every shitty card gives you Storm.
Well, you draw mana or you draw more card draw. And you're just I mean that's just how the deck is designed. It's a half mana, half card draw. Anyways, we're getting too lost into it. If you're playing against the rock has to like slide a Naturalize or Pernicious Deed activation in between, and so most of the pattern would be like if your opponent's playing slow, you just like run out a rock, and if you start the turn with a rock, that's like -2. And if your opponent is playing like really heavy on just trying to disenchant you, then you would wait until your combo turn to like cast a rock, because like once you cast it, you still get to cash it in for mana through your opponent's disenchant, right? So if you go Helm of Awakening plus Cloud of Fairies, your opponent disenchants in response to the Cloud of Fairies.
You've already paid the cost.
Exactly, you've already paid the cost, so you'll have traded 1 mana for there too, and they'll have added to your storm count, which we've discussed doesn't actually need to be that high, right? So like,
well, if you have 2 Brain Freezes, sure.
Yeah, which you're more likely to have if you have 4. Like if you have Storm 10, then it's lethal, and it's like so. Storm 9, right, is the Tendrils kill. Like this deck basically is just Storm 9, or Storm 8, but with Brain Freeze, just like 2 Brain Freeze. Those of you who are familiar with the old days of Pauper Storm, that's just we used to do Storm 9 with 2 Grape Shots. So same thing. Draw two Brain Freezes, win the game. Get there.
This deck probably wants more Sabo's Webs.
I'm testing out Back to Basics in the Sabo's Web spot, but
I like Back to Basics.
I like drawing a card too.
But drawing a card, it's also cheaper. The problem is, I don't know, which way it's supposed. I think play draw and like how hard you mulligan in game 1 probably matters a lot in the red-green matchup. But the problem is like you can both just completely outclass the red-green deck. Like if you have a Helm of Awakening before they have a Sphere of Resistance, like that's, or not, I mean, Sapphire Medallion's a better example, right? Helm of Awakening helps them also. So, okay, so let's say you have a Sapphire Medallion before they have a Sphere of Resistance. Well, the Sphere of Resistance isn't doing anything. And then once you have 2, right, like their strategy isn't doing anything. So like you could just super outclass them. But the problem is if they come out ahead, like they have a Moxdraw or something, you might never get off the ground, right? So I think
my inkling is that you're gonna have a hard time against red green without Sabo's Web, because if they give you time, then you like more time means more accumulated knowledge, right? So like if you get to that 8K for 3, then you'll probably be in a good spot against red green oath because you'll have drawn enough lands. But if you're not getting there, if you don't have more grind in the board, then you're kind of at the mercy of your draw. And 18 island against, as we discussed. I mean, okay, granted, island does not get wastelanded or
yeah, but so like Thermokarst, Winter's Grasp. I mean, they're still. I'm going to put this in air quotes because they're never good, but they're still good here, right?
Yeah.
But I think the problem is like if it's turn 4 and you have 3 land in play, I think like advantage bar to the blue deck, right? But the problem is like you could just like Mox Rishidon Port or something. You're pretty screwed. This deck doesn't. Like there's like if your turn is island, you're actually just already cooked.
You're actually quite good against specifically port because you can frantic search through port. But
no, it's turn 1. I'm like Mox Rishidon Port, right? And then like I just tap you down, and then I could do a land destruction spell right there. Like, well, you're pretty bad.
Yeah, that would be if you go Mox Port into LD, like that's good, or Mox Port, or if you just go Mox Sphere, that's obviously good.
Yeah, that's really good. Because
however, this is what I'm saying as a counterpoint, which is just that, like you said, the red green deck doesn't close, right? So all this deck needs to engineer a turn. So once again, to the listeners at home, like you only need 3 lands in play to go off because the only number of lands that you ever untap is 3 with frantic search, right? So if you're able to engineer a turn where you're able to start with 3 lands untapped, a rock in play, and your next rock coming, you just start, you have a rock, you have 3 lands, you play your first rock, and then you start ritualing, you can definitely get out. And so engineering that turn obviously is hard because, your opponent's like going after your lands. They can draw infinite with their Sylvan, right? Their Sylvan is immediately draw 4. And you have to have a Rushing River or Hercule's Recall or some kind of effect to remove
all the cards that aren't in his deck. You have to have all these cards.
Yeah, well, he's got Chain of Vapor, so he would just do Chain of Vapor, which obviously is awkward because then they would just chain it back to hit your rock at the same time. So you can't start. I mean, Marcus just doesn't know the format, right? I think if we like explain to him, it's like, hey, there's like this deck. It's taking up a huge part of the metagame that might be there. It's like it runs a bunch of Sphere of Resistance. Like he might have played, Hoodwink or Hercules or Rushing River instead of Chain of Vapor.
I wouldn't hate Powder Keg in this deck. Wouldn't hate it.
Yeah.
I think I would just. I mean, I think I'd be fine starting the deck. But I just play more Sabo's Webs. Tormod's Crypt is kind of an answer to Gaia's Blessing.
It's an answer to 1.
Right, so it's
if they cast 1, then okay. So to be clear,
a lot of things that might happen.
This is actually a very potent thing to point out, which is that some Gaia's Blessing players like me play 2 Gaia's Blessings and some play 3. So flash all the way back to the PSS. Rich Shea was like, well, if we're gonna play like 15, 20, 30 turns, like Laney's just gonna cast one of his 2 Gaia's Blessings. And then for me to brain freeze kill, all I have to do is have 1 stifle, right? It's a lot harder to beat double Gaia's Blessing from this spot because I only had 1. Once that first Gaia's Blessing hits the hand or hits the graveyard, it's actually quite easy to then beat the second one with a Tormod's Crypt. If of course the Blessing player is going to play a lot of turns. Which
the Tormod's Crypt is just a counter spell at that point.
Yeah, well, it counters the Blessing, and it won't. Of course, it won't shuffle the Blessing that's already in the graveyard. So, and then also what you can do is do the same trick. You have a Crypt in play. You go freeze, wait till the Blessing trigger, freeze again, wait till the Blessing trigger, freeze again, wait till the last Blessing trigger. If they have all 3 in their deck because they're crazy and they have 4 or something, and then you Crypt all their Blessings at the same time. Words of Wisdom, of course, is just a little bit more agile because it's a draw spell. It draws 2. It actually digs pretty well. So, I don't hate the Entombment. Like I cut them, but I think 1 copy is fine because like you're just gonna draw islands, right? So like it's a reusable 1 mana ditch all your islands.
Yeah, but I mean, almost anything is better. I think the flash of insight that you said is just. I think an impulse is probably better.
Yeah, that was initially what I did. I initially did one flash, one impulse, but
also
I see the vision. I see the vision.
You super don't need it because the deck has frantic search, which is the best island filterer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Marcus discovered that the deck doesn't generate enough volume to support a 2 minute. It needed like a 2 minute squeeze. So
well, look, I think this
he only got second place.
I own all the cards. Maybe I'll just play it.
Sapphire medallions are expensive, mostly due to commander players.
Really?
Yeah.
I own. Do you need a set? I think I own 4.
Yes.
You'd be nicer to
Michael
me.
J. I'll be nicer to you.
See?
We'll same 75. Well, okay. So what we can do is we can same 75 Storm at the next thing.
Oh, speaking of which, there's 2 reasons I wanted to podcast. Well, one is we just have a podcast, right? But one of them is, people in, I'm going to call it non-idiots because that's how I feel about it. People in non-idiots were like, where's my podcast? This is the Spike Colony Pre-Modern group. There's no updates, right? And I felt pretty bad because people were putting like crying memes and stuff like that. That's one thing. But second of all, I wanted to plug the upcoming events, right? So there's only 15 registered for the Spice tournament at the Endless Wurm tournament. So I think we got the one that you came in second last time, right? So I think we got capacity last time, but we should, if you want to put stuff in the show notes, put this in because I want to support our local community. Sunny's event is at the beginning of May, right? Is that right?
That is correct. It is going to be May 4th at 11 a.m. The Endless Wurm Spicy Pre-Modern Tournament. Deck submission is due 2 weeks ahead of time. Basically, you can't play a deck that is tier 1 or tier 2 by a very, very broad definition. So basically, any deck that you can think of, you can't play. So you have to.
Oh, I already got my deck approved.
You have to come up with a deck. That's basically the rule. It's like you have to come up with a deck. You can't just like take something and change a few cards. You just like come up. You can use existing concepts or whatever.
This tournament's going to be all wild combo decks.
I mean, I would say that if you wanted to do, say, a deck that featured Beast Attack and
why are you leaking my shit?
No, I'm talking about a deck that I want to make.
I maybe I already made a sweet.
I'm talking about the deck that has been a deck that I've always wanted to just make work, but I just keep on changing the cards until I've made green white Terrageddon. I'm just like, okay, hear me out. We've got green and white. I'm like, okay, we got a lot of acceleration. We've got like blast.
Oh, this is the little kid green white.
Yeah, little kid green white.
Man. What if it's my beast attacks against your beast attacks in the finals?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, oh, like Ancient Tomb.
My beast attack's gonna go.
Ancient Tomb mocks Call the Herd into Flashback Call the Herd into Beast Attack. Like, what are you gonna do?
Oh my god, I can't wait.
Turn 1 blast
to beast attack you.
That's not the deck that I would play. The deck that I would want to play, I'm just trying to play a deck that just like. I was like, well, Sphere of Resistance is a good card in Pre-Modern. It's like, what if we played Sphere of Resistance and Rhystic Study?
What is Rhystic Study? That's a commander card, right?
Yeah, Rhystic Study is blue and 2 enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a card, you draw a card unless they pay 1.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm going to attack you with my freaking Call of the Herd and not do that.
Oh, well, you'd have to attack through Propaganda, and you don't have any lands thanks to my Smokestack. Or my Braids. You might have to be sacking your Call of the Herd to my Braids. Imagine.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if there's people just going to play wild combo decks, it sounds like it. Like
Stacks isn't a combo deck; it's a prison deck.
No, Prison's a combo.
Okay, fair enough.
Wait, is Prison Controller combo, right? Like is it more like Controller, more like combo? I think it's more like combo. You just like all the cards suck, but you put them all together, and then they do something that's more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah, I fundamentally agree. I just think that it's like. It just depends on how what scale you want to look at it, right? Like I obviously agree. You use your combination of cards.
I think like the way that we think about Magic decks in general is kind of like cockeyed because like Jamie Wakefield pointed this out like 20 years ago. Like every deck is a combo deck. Like if somebody's just like Jackal Pup, like Ball Lightning, Fire Blast you, that doesn't feel like a fair game of Magic, right? Like
if somebody plays Land Tax and the Scroll Rack,
right? So. So like every deck is a combo deck, but like I think like our distinction is mostly around whether or not your cards are good, right? Like control decks, all their cards are good. Beatdown decks, all their cards are good, right? Like, and then you have decks where the cards are individually powerful, like the Rock. Then you have cards that are like that trade power for speed, like Sly, right? And you have other ones that trade speed for more power, like Blue White.
Yeah,
Like,
you could just have different sliding scales, right? So like prison decks are synergy decks, like combo decks are synergy, like very synergy decks.
Yeah, like
the Rock is not very synergy deck.
Yeah,
right?
so I guess the Rock that's interesting. Like I think the Rock is the apex of individual card power, right? But that like
well, it's very hard to say because so like consider the deck that is like Savannah Lions, Knights, like Mother of Runes, and
you mean the deck I should have played at the 1K.
Well, no, not even
lost 0 games.
Not even not even the one with meddling mages, right? Just like White Weenie, right?
Just handicapping my opponent.
So
I'll play this just without the best creature.
So White Weenie, well, you get a clean mana base. You get to play planes, or you get to play more, whatever wastelands or whatever. But like White Weenie, like what's the synergy between a Savannah Lions and a Silver Knight? It's like, well, if you play Savannah Lions into a Silver Knight, like it's much better than just one of those alone, right? So like our beatdown decks,
you're just like describing. So I would just say like beatdown decks are like the nadir of card power, and like I think like the best examples you can think of are like Lava Dart and Seal of Fire and Shock. Like these cards are so much worse than the cards in every other deck, but they have a lot of synergy.
Right. They depend on each other for the synergy. So it's kind of like a weird thing. But the
Fire Blast is awful in the abstract, but it's broken in this deck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Rock is such an interesting example because just like obviously the Rock has some synergy. Duress and Cabal Therapy have synergy. Cabal Therapy and Wall of Roots has synergy. You know what doesn't have synergy? Pernicious Deeds and Bird Paradise.
So yeah, I mean, like if you look at players like Reed and Chapin, Hall of Fame Pro Tour champions, their favorite decks are these because they like from an agency, but they had so much ability to make decisions, and if they're better than their opponents, which they are 95% of the time, then they get the second half of the agency equation.
We didn't actually talk about the
we didn't talk about the other half of the decks in the Easter Championship, which was our mandate for this episode.
I wanted to finish the thought. Well, the other decks are Burn, Replenish, Land Still, the
Rest. Those are the decks I want to talk about then.
Why do we want to? They're so boring. Burn is Burn.
Let's just quickly look at the
Okay, quickly look at my quick hits.
3-ball lightning.
Hold on.
20 lands.
Yeah. My quick hits. 3 Bobble, 3 Vortex, 3 Scroll, 3 Balls. It's just like, let's just do all threes.
My deck with he added one of your Sulfuric Vortexes and took out a ball. No, it's not my deck because he has Seal of Fire instead of Shock. Did not get the memo on Urza's Bauble. I am a big Seal of Fire fan. However, we almost played Seal of Fire in the $1,000 tournament at Bearded because we played your non-Urza's Bauble version. I think Seal of Fire is better, but I ultimately wanted to play Shock because I played my meme deck and I got to play my Japanese like unrecognizable Magic cards, and that was literally the reason why I played an inferior card. Sideboard 2 Hearth Charm, 4 Goblin Vandal. This person
did not want to battle against artifacts.
I don't even know what artifacts you're beating with.
Let's quickly zoom out to mention that the Swedes just play somewhat of their own pre-modern. I mean, I'm not like saying they don't play the same, but like, they're on stream and they're just like, the Swedish community is like a bunch of small meetups and they just kind of come together for Easter champs and it's kind of just a different vibe. So, Goblin Vandal gets Sphere of Resistance.
It never gets, it doesn't get Sphere of Resistance, but it might, but it probably doesn't. But it never gets Dreadnought.
I mean, it technically fogs the Dreadnought.
Maybe.
Because you have to hang. If I have Goblin Vandal, your Dreadnought has to hang. So it's actually Cold War from that point. Hearth Charm gets Dreadnought.
Yeah, Hearth Charm does. Hearth Charm is sweet.
I mean, I'm kind of in. Like, let's just ignore that Oath of Druids is a card for a moment. Like, wouldn't you rather your Overload does the damage? Like, wouldn't you rather just instead of just getting one of your opponents?
What's this artifact creature though, Lanny? It's not.
No. I'm talking about Goblin Vandal. Come on,
I
Goblin
thought we were
Vandal.
talking about Hearth Charm.
No, Heart Charm's whatever. Heart Charm can be overload, but Goblin Vandal is like at least interesting because it's just kind of like, well, instead of getting one sphere of resistance, why not get a sphere of resistance and a
As
Mox?
you know, I'm old enough to remember when these cards were in Standard. So Goblin Vandal is a thing, but we didn't play against Dreadnoughts, right? Like that's good for killing mana rocks.
Well, you know
is that what you're saying? Like, yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually kind of, I don't know. It actually feels like pretty relevant if like your opponent has, oh yeah, to be fair, Burn's never been a bad deck against Tinker, but it certainly isn't with 4 Goblin Vandals in the sideboard. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to take it up with Mikhail.
This is a perfectly serviceable
a second
deck.
Mikhail
Side
Alonin
should be better.
Well, we have just different ways in our culture. We only ever play 4 Price of Progress. We at least have 4 Vortex in the 75.
Well, so you can play however many you want. Just don't be surprised when you lose to the Rock. That's the even caffeinated loss to the Rock.
Well,
when he cut those things.
We don't know what this pilot beat, but the Rock is here in the 5th through 8th place. Anyways, Burn is Burn. I will say I am feeling very impressed with Burn's staying power in the metagame. It's always highly represented, and it kind of gets there. Like, Burn feels like it top 8s more consistently than the other good decks, which is crazy, right? So this top 8, no goblins, no Oath, no Dreadnought. And then if you just do like the big picture TC decks, which obviously is not like perfect science, but the big picture TC decks metagame is Madness, Goblins, and Burn.
Yeah, Madness is number 1. What the heck happened there?
It's just so what happens is Stanley plays Madness.
Top 8s twice every event.
Yeah, top 8s every single time, and then
twice.
All it takes is for a few other people to join in, and then that
number 1.
It. But
so, do you have all my Parallax cards still? I'm looking at this Replenish. I think Replenish is super good right now.
I have half your Parallax cards, and I gave you back. The Soul Lands and the Replenishes and the Opalescences. I don't have Parallax enchantments of my own.
Yeah, so I'm just because not that it matters right now because we can't even play this in the Spice meetup, but I think Replenish is super good right now, in part because you can play Sabo's Web pretty seamlessly in it, and it's like the only deck it was really bad against was 12-12, right? Like, and not even that bad. You can abeyance them, you can combo them back. Like, they have to play a fair game against you. You can get them with this says Wurm's Chant and abeyance and counterspells and deep analysis. Where's his Thawing Glaciers? He's just, I mean, this is a very Michael J sideboard. Look, these 2 hard counters. I mean, he's embracing the Sabo's Web movement.
Yeah, I watched Fran, like, the Sabo's Webs were annoying, but probably the more annoying fact was that Pablo could start the turn with the Soul Land and an island play and then just win.
The video lasted about 6 minutes, and 5 of it was Fran talking about his deck that he plays all the time. So, to be clear, the Sabo's Web on the second turn, both games,
he
demolished
didn't. No, he didn't have it in. And did he have it in games? I don't think he had it in game 2.
He game 1, if I recall correctly, Fran got everything he could possibly have wanted, and then Paul Master just like comboed him anyway. And then like he literally just like, oh, that was amusing. You blew up all my stuff, kill you. And then game 2, he just played a Sabo's Web.
Yeah.
And
well, I guess Fran doesn't have any Tormod script in his deck. So like no matter how many turns you play, if Pablo's deck only has 25 lands. But if you can always loot for lands and always ditch your Parallax enchantments, like you're just gonna hit. You just need to make 4 mana. That's the beauty of Replenish, is that you just have to make 4.
And then it depends. Like when I played it, I beat a lot of people with just Opalescence Wave, right? Like, but I played a less consistent version, right? Because I'm just saying Pablo. I'm just saying, you had 3 Opalescence, but Pablo used Replenish both times, and every time you use Replenish against red green, it's going to be like very efficient. I find it so amusing when people use Replenish because, like, I had I had the most standout replenish finish of anyone for the longest time. I just never replenished. I like slow gamed all of my matches, or like intuitioned for solitary confinement. You know, like all these like outside things. Like the idea that someone would just cast replenish and get all of their enchantments into play is so novel to me.
Well, you have to use replenish if you intuition for solitary.
That is true. I intuitioned I did intuition to that position, but almost everybody else I beat. Like I beat Robin just by like Swords of Plowshares and Seal of Cleansing, and then
this is.
And then he just didn't have any permanence, and
this
I just
is a deck
got him
with
with a slow win.
Yeah, this is a deck with 12-ish control cards in the form of Seal of Cleansing, Parallax Wave, and Plowshare. So you're pretty fine at a fair game. You have random Tide combo. Still don't like running 24 lands in this deck, but if you're...
What do you like, 26 land and Moxes? That's your life?
I like to play 26 lands. I'm willing to not play Mox if the metagame is less red.
Do you remember when I said you were the best deck designer in the world? I was wrong, but do you remember when I said it?
It was because of the Mox time.
Because of the Moxes. So I didn't think you could. It's not that I didn't think you could win. Obviously, both sides can win. I didn't realize how bad I was going to lose the red side.
Yeah. So to flashback way back in Michael J. and Lanny lore, we did test games with Parallax Replenish featuring 4 Mox Diamonds. Basically playing 4 Mox Diamonds. Well, I had crazy stuff going on my list, and I had 24 lands at the time. But the way that deck beat Burn was instead of going for Solitary, which Mike, which to be fair, Solitary's a much better strategy, but Mox helps you across the board without using Solitary.
You just went hard every time.
Yeah, every time. Anytime you had a City of Traders or Mox Diamond, you had acceleration that didn't cause damage. You could generally put together Tide combo, and then after putting together Tide combo, or just like a fast replenish combo, you can go like... You just got to Tide combo them once, and then you like finish them, or you just do the full combo.
Because I had me with Solitary Confinement. I had me at like, somewhere between 60 and 75% to win, and then but you without it beat me like 75%.
Yeah, it was like a 4-1 or 3.
Yeah, and I was
3-1.
just shocked at how good it was. Yeah. So.
And that's actually kind of how I liked to think about the deck. And obviously we all saw what happened when I played Rich. It's just like, okay, well, the speed really helps against goblins. Like, it makes a huge difference if you can, like, one of the,
that was against Jared, right?
No. It was against Rich in the finals.
Oh, I think you beat Jared in that matchup too by just
I beat Jared. I beat Jared parfait against goblins.
Okay.
But my point about...
Also, doesn't Rich have just like a goblin ringleader shaped anchor around his neck?
Yeah, basically.
Like he never win.
That's definitely the case. But anyways, my theory of the deck was just that, like, basically it has a fundamental problem, which is run 16 cards that cost 4 mana. And there's a lot of ways to solve this problem. One is by playing, Swords of Plowshares and Seal Cleansing to like buy you time, right? But you still have to hit, 4-ish.
The thing about that is you have to draw your cards in the right order.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem. Like, it's so bad when you have those cards and you draw them late, and it's also so bad when you have those, when you just have the 4s and you don't draw acceleration.
Yeah, and you can solve that by adding more mana source,
or you could just careful study to fix your draw.
Well, actually, I'm off careful study in my replenish list, but I just thought I was just kind of like, why don't we use the cards that we have? Like, instead of like bridging the gap between, turn 2 and turn 4 by going like Seal of Cleansing and then Parallax Wave eventually, like, why don't we just cast Parallax Wave 1 turn earlier, Parallax Tide 1 turn earlier, and just like establish all this stuff? Like, if our 4 drops come down on 3 consistently because we have, 4 Mox and 7 Soul Lands, then all of a sudden you can just like use the cards that are in your deck that are combo pieces and, just interactive spells.
Yeah, this deck doesn't have any careful study, so it really has to kind of use Frantic Search and Attunement to fix its draw. Like, you have to get a little lucky with this deck. It's only 24 lands, even with 6 soul lands.
Well, you just line up Plowshare. It's like if you don't have Attunement,
like, again, you have to draw them in the right order, and there's like 3 basic items.
Oh, trust me, I know. I play a lot of Replenish, and I cut careful study from my Replenish deck. But yeah, I mean,
but if you have Moxes and stuff like that, then you're replacing it with something that has a function that bridges, right?
Yeah.
This deck doesn't have.
That's my entire point. Is that like
I think we're disagreeing.
Yeah.
Let's just move on. Land still, Robert Schramm. How many of the good cards do you have in your sideboard?
I mean, I don't even think we should chat over this deck because you're so opinionated about what land still should look. And like
there's 3 Tormod's Crypts in the sideboard, unplayable. Serenity in the sideboard, unplayable. Light of Day.
This is you like buried the lead.
What happened to you that you have Light of Day?
This land still has 2 pure value stifles in the main deck.
No combo,
just pure value.
Oh my god.
I'll stifle your dreadnought. You stifle your dreadnought, I'll stifle your dreadnought. I'll stifle your flooded strand.
So he's just like trying to stop a flooded strand?
I don't know. They're definitely all
right.
They definitely don't look right.
Wow. And then this, I guess he has 4 Hydro Blood. I mean, the second circle, I never liked the second circle of protection red. I've had it out with Caffeinated a bunch about like what the second one should ever be. I'm like if you have Arcane Lab, right? Arcane Lab circle red is a win by itself, but that's a little hard to put together. But his argument is like the second one should be an Enlightened Tutor, which would help you put together like the other half of an Arcane Lab or a Warmth. But I'm super into blasts. Just give me blue blasts.
Yeah. Well, we got 4
blue
blasts.
They stopped Goblin Lackeys.
Yeah.
And the second circle protection red, I never like it. The problem is if your red opponent is good, he can beat the first circle of protection red anyway. So the second one doesn't do anything, right? Like you need something else.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Or if you're going all in, then you play 2 cop, 2 warmth. I don't think there's too much. I mean, we've got absorb, so that definitely.
Oh yeah.
Can get.
Roland and I play tested this a bunch, and like the red deck never wins game 1 if the absorb resolves.
Yeah,
it's just the 3 life because there's just so much other stuff.
It's a 2-for-1. Right? It's a 3-mana 2-for-1.
It always gets like a ball lightning, right? Because think about the stage of the game it's getting cast. So, you're right. We should not go over this deck. I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah. Congrats to Robert Schramm. Actually, the fun story about this player was that he showed up late to the tournament. So he started 0-1 with a mandatory game loss and then 1 out to make top 8. But he lost to Storm in the quarters.
Well, I guess you literally no Dust Bowl, literally none of the sweet sideboard. So no Meddling Mage. No Arcane Lab, no Dust Bowl, no Phyrexian Furnace. Yeah. What is this deck good against? Rock?
No, you just play Landstill, baby. You just sleeve up. All you need is some card draw, some counter spells.
Look, all these cards are playable cards, right? So like,
Stifle is very unplayable.
Pretty sus. Sure. Okay, this is pretty sus. But they're theoretically all these cards are playable. Like, so everything that you play, like, it's not like he's just putting in, Scathe Zombies or Scrib Sprites. He can't even cast the Scrib Sprites. Like, he's putting in cards that are, like, good cards. They're just not the cards that we would put in. And so, like, when you do that, you're making your deck worse against the field, right? That's the bet. Like, otherwise, we wouldn't have the opinions that we have. But you're making your deck better against something, right? Like, I'm just wondering, like, who are you better?
No, I mean, I honestly don't hold that like view when talking about Blue White the Rock because, like, this analysis breaks down. It actually kind of goes into what I find so interesting. It kind of goes into what you're saying about the Storm deck of just kind of like, oh well, you're gonna play the cards that you draw in your hand, right? So, like, these are just a bunch of cards that you can choose to play one or the other on a given turn, and you're just going to do that every single turn of the game for the rest of the game.
Sometimes something happens.
Yeah, and like this is what we're talking about though, right? This is like mid-range gameplay, which is just kind of like, oh, like which counterspell am I going to use? Like, am I going to attack? Am I going to draw cards? Am I going to cycle Decree? Do I Wrath now? Do I Wrath later? Like, this is just how Landstill behaves. Like, okay, well, we have 3 Mana Leak 4 counterspell and 2 absorb, but we only have 1 Seal of Cleansing main. We have no Phyrexian. Like, all these stuff is just like, sure, like Selden made a decision, right? He's like, I'm gonna play 3 Phyrexian Furnaces And I'm just going to like accidentally get so many points against random matchups where the graveyard matters. And then the rest of the time, I'm just going to pay 1 mana to cycle it. Like all he needed to do, he tried Force Spike, he tried Portent, he landed on Phyrexian Furnace. All he needed to do, he was just like, sometimes I got 1 mana. Like, I need something in my deck to do with 1 mana. On it could be Stifle, could be Portent.
Sometimes the Stifle gets him.
Yeah, Stifle's gonna like. Stifle's not gonna get no one, right? Like it's not gonna do nothing for an entire day of Magic. So, anyways,
I mean, I lost to Stasis at Lobster God. I got my Flooded Strand interdicted. Like,
boom.
All right, you got
Taste
me.
it. Yeah. So, anyways, that's the Rock. Moving on to the Rock.
That's the Rock.
Moving on from Blue White the Rock to Black Green the Rock. Now that we're 7 lists into this top 8, I'm getting this distinct impression that like you literally could have pulled up this top 8 and been like, oh shit, I'm in the wrong year. Like
this is like the 2 years ago version.
Yeah, I pulled out the wrong year. But yeah, I mean, I will say this, like I didn't make my changes to the Rock to like make it I did it to like suit what I wanted to do and like use the synergies that I wanted to use. Like I've actually walked back a bit because Phil, a pilot on Magic Online, has been piloting a version of the Rock for a while. We've talked about it on this cast that plays for Yavimaya Elder and
the poor man's
Phyrexian Ranger or Call the Herd
or the rich man's Phyrexian Ranger. Can't tell which one.
And I'm just like, oh well, that's bad. That card's bad. I hate like 2 lands. Doesn't really do anything. But he uses those 2 lands to then power out 4 copies of Drain Tournament. We've talked to death about how I like to build the Rock, but we've got a little bit of everything. We got 2 Living Wish, we have the Crows and Tusker, we have 1 Spirit Monger, 2 Hermits, 2 Wall of Roots.
Honest question. Why would you play 3 Blastoderm, 1/1 Spirit Monger? Like, a Spirit Monger costs 1 more mana than a Blastoderm. It is bigger and doesn't kill itself.
You just need to play on curve.
Do you? This is not a play on curve deck.
It's the same. No, I'm not saying like you have to play it on turn 4. I'm just saying that like, well, you don't always have 5 mana. Like the ideal curve of the deck should just peter out at the top. So the person's just like, I need 3 5-drops, I need 7 4-drops and 3 5-drops, and I need exactly 2 Wall of Roots. Not to say that they're doing exact science, but like, we will add this.
I think I played 4 Wall of Roots when I qualified to the Rock. Also, if you're going to play this many beasts...
BK loves Wall of Roots. I think Wall of Roots is definitely a strong card. I just don't like blowing it up. This deck has a
Crows and Tusker. This deck has a Crows and Tusker, Living Wish, Spirit Monger, 4 Ravenous... Oh, everybody has 4 Ravenous Bella. But it's like Blastoderm and Sideboard Spirit Monger. 0% chance I would play this deck. His sideboard land is a Dust Bowl. I can kind of get behind that. But I think I mean, wouldn't you play a Mountain in this deck? And then, like,
you can't contested Cliffs your Blastoderm. Like, that's the only problem.
No, I'm not playing the Blastoderm. I am playing Crows and Tusker, which searches for red. And you could get 10 red in here at the cost of 1 card right now. 10 red. Right? You have a Crows and Tusker, and then you can trade in 8 of these basics.
I don't know if Contested Cliffs is better than Dust Bowl.
I mean, it's gotta be. This is a beast deck.
Well,
this is literally a beast theme deck.
If we have Beast Attack over Blastoderm, then I'm in.
Well, yeah. Blastoderm just seems so bad to me.
All right. Anyways, Living Wish Rock, 4 Engineered Plagues in the sideboard.
Thank God.
The Dust Bowl hanging out on the sideboard. We got the Jigapede for...
when would you ever want Jigapede?
Jigapede is... Standstill can't beat Jigapede. You just play Jigapede every turn.
What do you mean? This is one of the worst cards ever against Decree of Justice.
Well, you've got 4 Engineered Plague for that.
This is... It's not that this is a disaster of a deck. Your argument is a disaster. No one is losing to Engineered Plague with their land still deck.
Jigapede gets there. Jigapede is gonna... I mean, I don't know. It's got Shroud. Nothing has Shroud. The most important.
It can't get through a Mishra's factory.
It can eventually. It doesn't get through once.
All right,
but just wait until my next.
Let's say you're like this bizarro world.
Look.
Where somehow the opponent has gotten locked under your engineered plague and has no way out. Okay, got it. You've got me. It's on Soldier. You're gonna lose to Angel's beatdown before that Gigapede gets through whatever random man lands.
I can go toe to toe versus you on Deeds against Decrees.
Really?
Yeah.
How many Factor Fictions do I get to cast?
0. It's an unfair fight if you cast a single Factor
Oh,
Fiction.
really? Because there's 3 in the deck that we just looked at. How many times did Standstill get broken?
I mean, obviously, I duressed every copy of Factor Fiction. I mean,
and Standstill.
Jesus Christ, come on. Yeah, and Standstill.
So, okay, I agree. I am peeling one one fairy conclave off the top of my deck.
To be clear, I've never said that the Rock can beat Factor Fiction.
Clearly you're arguing that Gigapede is gonna get. It's never gonna get through.
Yeah,
that's the thing is, in the games the Gigapede could potentially get through, anything would have killed them.
Yeah, I mean that's probably true, but Landstill versus the Rock is interesting because the Rock always feels like it's behind, but sometimes Landstill has 2 cards in hand and 5 life, and then something weird happens and the Rock ends up winning, and you're just like, wow, that was tight.
That was weird.
I mean, a lot of people look at it as a 50-50 matchup. I've seen multiple forum posts. It's just oh, how do you beat the Rock as Landstill? How do you beat Landstill as the Rock? It's just well, it just sounds like you're playing Blue-White the Rock versus Black-Green the Rock, and both of you somehow leave with a 45%
I hate your
win rate.
Analysis about this so much. Let's move on. Finally, Elves. Oscar Scold playing Elves.
Stock.
The boring.
Two Masticores. No Call of the Herd.
A mountain.
No Call of the Herd sideboard. Of course, there's a mountain. Where is
there's a Flametongue Cavu.
It's 2022. Ooh, there is a Flametongue Cavu in the sideboard. Okay, that's the Easter Champs for you.
Kamal in the sideboard. 1 Wall of Blossoms with 2 Winter Orb. What deck is this? Oh man. This is 3 Deranged Hermits. I get 2 Masticores, 3 Deranged Hermits. See, it's like maybe he read Mengu's article, but then just decided against
No. They're just they're just chilling out there. It's just a different metagame. I think it's 48 player tournament, a little bit of a small pool. Although 6 rounds is a pretty good hashing out, but I think that these are all playable decks. I think it's hilarious that the decks that we would have considered more playable are in the bottom half of this top 8, and the decks that we considered less playable are in the top half.
All right, so let's order this. Which deck do you think is the most playable? Just you only know the archetype, you don't know the build. Most playable.
Burn.
I'm gonna have Burn. Yeah, okay. Second most playable.
Replenish.
I've got Elves. I assume you have Elves third.
Elves third, yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, now it's tough. We're at 4. You only know the archetype, not that I've got land still.
Blue-White the Rock, yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then.
Well, if you just listed Tide Control, I would assume that it's Blue-White Tide Control. So you have to say Mono Blue. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Mono Blue Tide Control. Oh, wow. And then the bottom 4? Oh, I don't know. I think I have Storm at the bottom. Tide Control is so bad against. So the number 1 deck we had was Burn, and then my number 2 deck was Elves.
I have Draco Blast at the bottom.
No, Draco Blast can. I mean, I feel like both of the blue decks that are in the finals are so bad to Burn and so bad to Elves. That's they're just bad to both of those decks. I mean, I know that you tried to put me through the quiz session or whatever, but how bad is Storm to just first turn Llanowar Elf go? You're quaking in your boots already.
Well, fun fact, I played that matchup, or what I thought was that matchup. So in game 1,
yeah,
I'm just kind of on the draw, and they're Forest Korean Ranger. And I'm like, dang. I'm like, okay, Island, pass. And they're just survival of the fittest. And I was like, oh shoot, Elves. And I was like, okay.
So now in your head, you're like, I gotta
land,
rate.
Yeah. And I was like, land, rock, pass. And then I was.
Which one? Has to be Medallion.
Yeah,
There's
Medallion.
No way you're putting you're putting.
Yeah, no, I actually
Wait,
talked
there.
this through. So it was an interesting spot because obviously Helm reduces Medallion, but Medallion doesn't reduce Helm. So I just ran out Medallion automatically. But I was just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't want to give them like 1 mana Priest of Titania. But if it's for 1 turn, I don't know if it matters. And then they just like they get Granger, they get Mountain. So it's a little bit of a slow start. But then I was just like, okay, well, next turn they're going to start having Vigilante. So I think I got to send. So then I play the second rock and I went on turn 3. And then my first like 3 Brain Freeze results resolved. And they started flipping over Goblin Welders and Tangle Wires and artifacts. And I was like, oh, this isn't elves at all. I was not in a rush. But I went on turn 3 anyway. So it was great. And then the next time I just like double freeze them with a low storm count. But anyways, I think that, elves, like, I don't know. I had to change everything that I thought about elves after, just kind of like not seeing it do its thing recently. Every time that I've played it, I've always felt like it was very powerful, but I think that maybe some of us on this podcast might have overstated the frequency of turn 3 kills. Maybe too soft to goblin. Well, we've definitely talked about how bad it is against goblins. And
Unless you're Mengu.
I mean, unless you're playing Mengu's build, and again, this isn't Mengu's build. And then of course, debatable about burn, but definitely doesn't look good and super not good against 4 Sulfuric Vortex. So
I'm a big fan of being on the burn side. Of that matchup.
Yeah, me too. So elves, I'm not upgrading elves back to tier 1 anytime soon. It's always felt like the best survival of the fittest deck, mostly because it produces a lot of green mana.
What if you're Cyberpunker?
Well, so that's the thing is like I didn't play against Cyberpunker in my Grow Talk video, but I did play against somebody else on Survival Madness, and I just played a fast Quirion Dryad, and like that was a blunder, right? We talked about it. It's just like on turn 3, after countering a Wild Mongrel, instead of Meddling Maging naming Survival of the Fittest, which made life super easy, I just played Quirion Ranger or Quirion Dryad, and then life was still super easy.
One of your matches, you definitely blundered. Like, I can't remember what you did, but you should have just cast a third turn Psychotog. It was just so obvious to me. You just cast a Psychotog there. I think it might have been against the Elves deck, because he wasn't going to kill you, right? And then you would have won. Maybe it's not the Elves deck you played against. I think you might have played an Engineered Plague, but his creature in play was like a symbiote, right? So like it wasn't even good.
Yeah, I mean, I probably had like I remember an awkward Engineered Plague spot.
Yeah, like sure. If you had just played a Psychotog, right? Like, you just can't counterplay you, because like his best action will be to play a bunch of elves the next turn. Then you could just get leverage with an Engineered Plague if he did that. So then like, but then he's just like in this situation where he's just always behind, right? Like, even if you're just sending the 1/2, you can never really block it.
Well, in game 4, I caught 3 with an Engineered Plague, but obviously I didn't have to work that hard for it. But regardless, still won, so that's really all that matters.
That black deck is sweet. I'm gonna make that.
Oh yeah, we can. So, anyways, I posted a video on YouTube. I played Grow Talk. I went 5-1.
3 hours long. I watched it though.
I started 5-0. So the last time I made a video, I started 4-0, and I was playing Green White Oathplush. And then in the last round on game 3, my black opponent went ritual, things and things. And then this one I started 5-0. And then in game 3, or no, this was game 2, my black opponent went ritual, guy, sphere of resistance.
So the first game was super weird. He unmasks you with dark ritual.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I mean, I'm like, when I say I'm sure that's right, I'm putting it in air quotes. Or like it's probably more efficient than other lines. But
it seems reasonable if you don't have anything else to do, because like obviously you don't want to cast Dark Ritual and exile something to unmask in the same turn. You're going -2.
Well, I mean, you could go -2. Well, it depends what they have, right?
They just have 2/2s. What do you mean? What do they have? They have either Skittering Scourge or Dothy Horror.
Right? What the opponent has. You could just like, okay, you take like their sweeper and then, all right, drop this stuff and then cast Sphere of Resistance on the second turn. Probably can't lose.
Well, we're talking about game 1 if they unmasked with Dark Ritual.
He unmasked you and then played a Sarcomancy.
Yeah, it was game 1.
And then turn 2, he played I don't remember what he took out of your hand, but then he played like a Skittering Scourge, and I'm like, this is going to be a humiliating loss.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And
It's
then
like
you're just like, my deck can't ever beat 2/2s and 3/3s,
Yeah, it
or
just-
apparently 3/2s.
yeah,
Like
literally can't.
any 3/3 just gets you.
Yep, Call the Herd. I mean, I fought my way through a lot of Call the Herd.
Could you beat a rogue elephant?
No.
Probably not.
I mean, my Jared messaged me. No, Robin messaged me playing against Jared. Robin messaged me and he was just like, hey, how do you ever beat this list? And he showed me like a red-green beatdown deck with like Bolt, Incinerate, and like guys. And I was just like,
so like Flame Tongue Kavu anywhere into 75.
I don't think there was Flame Tongue Cab. It was pretty low to the ground, but it's just like guys and burn. And I was just like, you can't.
Like, okay, here, I'm just gonna name cards. Tell me if you can beat it. Can you beat a River Boa?
No.
It's tough, right? Like,
I have to like fire and stuff. Well, okay, so
like they have to screw up, right?
so
like,
Dryad brawls with River Boa. So I can beat just a River Boa. If all you have
it's a River Boa.
is 2 forests and a River Boa,
Yeah.
then I got you. But if you have
A River Boa
2
and
River
anything
Boas,
else. Oh, two.
if you have Rancor on your River Boa, then wait, hold on. My deck is Sword Splashers. Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. I completely forgot. So I cannot beat multiple River Boas, but I can beat a River Boa. I could even beat
What if I made like a
Rancor.
green mid-range deck and my deck was just like Llanowar Elf, River Boa, Call
I would
of the Herd?
never beat that. Never in a million years.
What if I had like, what's the one that's like 5/4 trample, return a creature to your hand every turn?
Stampeding Wildebeest.
Yeah, and I'd like Stampeding Wildebeest, Wall of Blossoms.
Well, many decks can't beat that. The Rock wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to beat that.
Yeah, so
Most decks can't beat drawing 2 cards a turn. You've just described an engine, my friend.
yeah, so maybe I'll make. Oh wait, see, Beast Attack isn't good in this deck, right? It's just
You
too
can't pick up.
fancy.
Yeah, you can't pick up a Beast token
Yeah.
with Stampeding Wildebeest.
I'm just imagining things that you could never beat for future tournaments. So I'm like, oh, will Lanny be there? Welcome. I'm gonna put him in the Hurt Locker, and the Hurt Locker is a River Boa.
No, we're like
and a Call of the Herd.
after multiple feels bads tournaments in a row where we just like we're metagaming against each other. I think we're like locked in on same 75 or secrecy in all future tournaments.
Well, I was gonna secrecy you for the Spice tournament, and I was like enlisting BK to help me. But then if we have to give away the decks 2 weeks early, there's no point because people are still allowed to tune the decks in the ensuing 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Doesn't matter. I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to
Beast
stay.
Attack theme deck.
I've got like a
Literally Beast Attack themed.
I think I have a birthday barbecue to get to in like the second half of the day, so I'll probably like show up to play as many rounds as I can. But
So I have to plug that. So put that in the show notes, and then I also plug. Is it April 21, which is in just like 3 weeks?
yeah, that's correct. If you are listening to this,
Fifth Hammer,
and-
you better come.
yeah, if you're listening to this, you're in the tri-state area. There will be a spicy jacked 1K put on by Matt Juan. He's really gassing up the price pool. He's just throwing in his personal Mox Diamond. He just wants to see a bunch of people show out and show up for pre-modern. So shout out to Matt. That's going to be Fifth Hammer Brewing on the 21st. We'll get that on the MTG NYC website, I'm sure, and the Magic Discord and
So yeah, so just to be clear, top 8 stamped meddling mages, top 1 just thrown in mocks, right? So Matt's just donating the mocks to gas the card pool.
yeah, and then just
and
like
it's a 1K.
yeah, and well, it's just like buy in 0 rake. So cash payout depending on attendance. So that's gonna be an awesome time. We need roughly 1K a month, right? So that's kind of how it goes here.
Yeah, so people should come because I mean Matt's putting up a Mox. Dude, you could beat Lanny and then also walk away with a Mox. Imagine that.
It would be kind of sad for me because it's my favorite card.
Yeah, so what if Lanny and I agree to play meme decks? And by meme decks I mean I'm gonna metagame against Lanny and he's gonna metagame against me. Just don't play Lanny's same deck. You won't get metagamed against.
Yeah, or I might just be I might be out of wife points on the 21st, so we'll see.
Dude, you can't. You agreed when Matt gave us a ride to Bearded that you were gonna prop this tournament.
I did not put that into writing. I did not sign that in blood. Especially because he put it on a Sunday when I specifically said I can do Saturdays.
Listen, buddy. It's literally putting up an extra mox on top of.
I'll make it easier for you to win. Obviously, I'm going to.
No, it's easier for me to win when you play because I metagame against you. The one time I didn't metagame against you, you were my only loss in the tournament. Can you imagine if I had just used my usual deck selection criteria? I would have won the tournament. You were my only loss.
I mean, you saw that match against Black-White, right? I thought I would never beat the Black-White deck in a million years. Turned out to be very easy. You just cast Armageddon once, and then you win.
I told you that deck can never beat Armageddon. That was literally my reason for not ever wanting to play it in a real tournament.
Yeah, Armageddon's pretty rough. It's kind of interesting.
I mean, it also can't beat Cam. I played it at a meetup, and he just enchantressed me to death, like he always does.
You played Black-White control against Cam? Yeah, that's probably bad.
No, you play a bunch of specialized cards, you can get them, right? Like, you need to have cards like, you need to set them up with a Chroma's Vengeance.
Into Haunting Echoes.
That is the way that I can imagine it. But I don't, that's obviously, you have a lot of weirdo cards to get there.
I mean, he's got the rando, I don't know, it's bad. Enchantress, still a deck. Easter Champs, congrats to all the players. That sounds like an awesome time. Hopefully, we can even make it out to Sweden. I heard it's beautiful that time of year. One of these days to go.
Dude, what bands do they have out there? The Cardigans? That's one of my favorite bands.
They have very many bands. ABBA, of course.
ABBA is in London now. So I just saw a thing on this. They're in London now, but they have it's peak ABBA. They hired not Industrial Light and Magic, because I guess Disney owns that now, right? But they hired actual George Lucas to special effects like ABBA at their peak. When was ABBA at their peak? In the 70s? So they're having it's crazy, live concerts, but they're VRing ABBA into these live concerts in London. So they're in an actual place, but the people that you see are peak ABBA, even though the performances are live, right? So it's crazy. And they're selling out every night, it's just super weird, right? Can you imagine this selling out every night to watch the Eras Tour on your TV? But, it's actual George Lucas, and they're doing some kind of crazy augmented reality. So it's like you were in a concert, and it's just ABBA. Was it the 70s? Is that when they were? I don't know when they were at their peak. Their early 80s.
That sounds right. But
but isn't that they're all 75 now? But I think this is crazy. They're talking about using the same tech. So a bunch of people are signing up to George. I guess I don't know why other people can't figure out this technology, but George Lucas, I guess, is the kingpin of doing these, I would say, virtual live events for rock bands, and they're talking about doing it with Biggie and Elvis, people who've passed away, which is it's just insane, right? It's not insane to me that people would want to enjoy the music of someone who's passed away. It's insane to me that you would sell out a stadium every night with the concert is robots, right? That's the thing that's crazy to me.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but then again, stranger things have happened. I wanted to see U2 at the Sphere, and I was like, everybody hates U2 now, right? Because they put an album on your iPod, and everybody was super mad about that, so they just hated them forever. Sold out every single night. It was U2. It's U2's supposed to be washed. It's you guys hate U2. It's I'm the only one who likes U2. It's why is it impossible to get into this concert?
It's not Bono's fault that they put the album on your iPod.
It might be. He probably could have been
he probably made a few $1 million for that. Maybe it was the Edge.
He almost certainly did make a lot of money from that one way or another. But yeah, I do think that fundamentally you are incorrect, because if Bono said, let's not put this album on everybody's iPod, this could backfire.
Also, this was 2006. How mad are people about this?
They're still mad. It's all they say about U2. I'm just hey, I really like U2. I want to see them at the Sphere. And it's oh man, U2, they put that stupid album on my phone.
Also, that was not one of their best. First of all, I had one of those iPods. My name was etched on the back. The album was on there. My iPod was black with a red circle. And I wasn't mad, although I just literally never listened to that song or whatever that album.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. Anyways, congrats to everyone in the Easter Champs. I don't know. Come on, man. Oh, come on, Flint. You're oh, we can. Pre-modern's moving too fast. apparently it's not moving at all because 8 deck lists in the top 8, all with just like the cards that are in pre-modern. Like, listen, if Landstill and the Rock are top 8ing with just like the cards that you like,
2002 version of the Rock.
Yeah, it's like
Scourge hasn't been printed yet.
nothing. Like it's cyclical. Like stuff pushes in one way, and honestly, I do feel like that analysis of the format is like pretty accurate to some extent. Like obviously, optimization and like whatever. Like there are some things that are like there are many decisions in deck building that are strictly better or strictly worse. But like if a Landstill deck is like whatever 70 of 75, the only thing that gets optimized is the fringe, right? Like the core of the deck still functions, right? So like even if you're playing your like super optimal deck, like you still have to contend with somebody who's going to be playing like just mid-range and just like making decisions every turns or drawing well or drawing absorb for your ball lightning, and then you're just gonna like lose. Just like sideboards are variable, everything's variable. What matters is that
I can't get behind this Landstill sideboard. This thing's killing me. This is just bad against everybody.
It wasn't bad against 5 straight players in the Swiss. So either that or you just capped it. You got your 45%. I wanted to mention this anecdote. Aspiring Spike was on Humans of Magic podcast. He was talking about testing for the Pro Tour. This was like a modern Pro Tour. So basically there's just this blue-black mid-range control deck that like showed up and blew up like over the weekend in modern. And so they were testing it in this Pro Tour team, and they were like testing it out in these leagues, and they were just like winning like crazy, right? So they like 60-70% playing in online leagues. Which, that's just like the masses, right? It's harder than FNM, but like not, it's just like random opponents. And then where they're testing in-house, all of a sudden the deck was like 40%. And they found that they're like, well, what's nice about the deck is that like you just wait for your opponent to make a preponderance of mistakes. Like you just like play control, you just like have high agency and you use your decisions. And then you win. And if your opponent's not making mistakes, then, you lose. So, with decks like Blue White the Rock and Red Black Green the Rock, there is definitely a pretty strong element, I think, of that kind of agency. It's like, well, you've got card draw, you've got removal, card selection. Well, there's no card draw on the Rock, but discard, right?
There's card draw on the Rock.
There is not what I would call
recast and cost Crozen Tusker.
That is the only card advantageous. The 2 card advantageous cards,
fact or fiction,
are Crozen Tusker and Wall of Blossoms. And of course, Recurring Nightmare, which is the engine. Anyways,
I have 4 Crozen Tusker in my Spice deck, and I'm going to say fact or fiction every time I cast it.
Oh, well, then I'm definitely not going to the tournament. But regardless,
why? Because
I can't stand it. Fact or fiction.
It's a Spice tournament.
The worst case scenario. No, of course. And I already told you I'm going to try to go. Fact or fiction. The worst case scenario, you get a card in a land. The best case scenario, you get 2 lands in a card.
But sometimes I can cast 7 mana for a super inefficient creature.
Okay. Is this the most unlistenable Spike Colony podcast ever?
No, it's equally unlistenable. Although we fought over that stupid Storm deck earlier. Then I was like, so I might have some extra Sapphire medallions. They're like, oh, I'm going to be nice now.
Yeah, I'm a believer. I'll proxy the medallions if you don't give them to me. How do you end up with a bunch of Sapphire medallions? Aren't they like a rare that's undraftable?
When I got into pre-modern, I wanted to buy Sapphire Medallion, and then I bought a set, and then I bought another set because I wanted to buy Sapphire Medallion because I forgot that I bought the other set, and then I looked at my cards, and it turned out I had a set from just playing like 20 years
from
ago.
Tempest from 97.
So I just have like 3 sets.
Oh.
I have at least 2 sets. Like I have more than one set.
OG Tempest.
I think I have 3 sets.
OG Tempest is like $20, and then they're available off the list for $12.
No, I have real ones.
Yeah, I know you have real ones.
List. Come on.
But yeah, anyways, I understand that I'm like unnecessarily like I'm a little extra high on the Storm deck when like I've only ever had like I've always thought the Storm deck was like tier 3. Like I was just like, so you just like disenchant one of the rocks and they can't win. And because like I beat it with the rock. I just arrested him a couple times. I disenchanted and I attacked like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, I don't understand this deck. Like, it's a very like, it's crazy because it's just kind of like, wow, they can disenchant your High Tide. That's really, really bad. But I just like watch Marcus play, and like literally the moment I fell in love when he was just like, I'll just cast Meditate, go. And I was just like, wait. I was just like, how many decks? Like, just imagine just casting Meditate against Red Green Oath. It's like, what are they gonna do with the turns?
Well, they could just restrict your mana.
Yeah, but like, they restrict your mana. You just drew 4 cards. You just play lands. Like that's the best thing, right? Drawing cards is like one of the best strategies against Red Green Oath, because like if you just draw more lands, you can draw out like trading one for one on eight Stone Rains against 20 lands is like not a winning proposition. Eventually they're going to stop Stone Raining you, right? And then eventually you can start a turn with 3 lands. Anyways, I'm not saying it's a great matchup. I'm just saying that like I thought that the Storm deck needs a lot for it to go right to win. And don't get me wrong, it benefits from a lot going right, but its resiliency, as displayed on camera in the Easter Championships and in like my match testing so far, has been surprising. Do I think it's like possibly tier 2? That's probably still questionable, but so I just think I vastly underrated.
Turnabout good?
So the Turnabout is most likely being used as mana short.
Is a mana short?
Yeah, mana short, but it's like a split card. So it's like mana short, but like if I draw it during combo, it still produces mana. It's also like what you could do is if you're playing a really, I cut the Turnabout from the sideboard, but if your plan is to play a game where you develop your mana and get a lot of lands in play, Turnabout is like a crazy source of mana, right? Because the best that you can do for Frantic Search and Snap and Cloud of Fairies, Snap is just +2, Frantic Search is just +2, right? So Turnabout can be like +6. So that means if you're going to play a grindier game, you can you can trim down on the smaller rituals. You can just trim your Cloud of Fairies Snap package just a little bit. Have Turnabouts in there, which generate a little bit more mana if you have the lands, and then put more value into your deck.
I know this is going to sound awful, but it's like maybe it's relevant. Like maybe you side out Cloud of Fairies against the Rock, and Snap isn't good against them. Because like, what if they engineered Plague Fairy?
Yeah, so
right, actually, that's awful, right? And it's also, I mean, there went your engine.
Yeah, no, I mean it definitely is relevant in that scenario.
But it also cuts off Snap. That's the thing, right? Like it's just like each engineered plague is like an 8-for-1. Like it's kind of insane.
Well, you're still actually kind of down to have Snap in your deck, right? Just as a time walk.
Yeah.
I agree. But I agree that
you're not degenning them.
I agree that Engineered Plague naming Fairy is super reasonable. I think I had an opponent do that in my recorded matches.
Thank God we play all 3.
But yeah, all 3.
Thank God. Can you imagine if we didn't have the 3rd Engineered Plague? Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean,
every time I see 3,
could we play 4?
I'm just like,
could we play 4 though? Could we?
I'm just like, seriously.
Could we dare to play 4? The funny thing is, even if that happens, and Cloud of Fairies has cycling, so they can just 0 for, like, obviously they get you on your synergy, but
I don't want to think about Cloud of Fairies anymore, because remember when I lost the Cloud of Fairies?
Yeah, I remember when you lost
and I just gave him 8 time walks by using my Sylvan Library.
I remember it well.
Now we're done. This end of this podcast, I'm gonna go cry in the corner.
What do we title this one? This one's just Easter Champs, huh?
You're just Easter. Oh, you can just call it like Mike cries in the corner. That's fine.
We just like added so much to the money match docket. I'll take Burn against Goblins at even. I'll take Storm against Dreadnought at even. I am like, so I will. Okay, I'll walk this back at least a little bit. I am thinking about what it would be like to put a bunch of money on it and then just have you like turn to me like 3 times in a row, and then I'm out like $100, and I'm just kind of like, Dreadnought is kind of bullshit. But you gotta put your money where your mouth is.
Like I said, I think it's winnable from that side. I just don't think it's good. right? So you seem to think that it's good.
I'll illustrate this. I think that it has a plan that I think, like, it has a gear, right? So instead of it just being like, oh, the wheels are falling off, there's nothing I can do, right? Like when we were playing Burn against Cop Warmth, every single like game 2, game 3, right? I was like, oh, there's nothing I can do. Like I need them to not do their thing. That's like the actually people will criticize us, or not, like they obliquely criticize us, right? Because they're just like, oh, I'm listening to a podcast and they're like, never wins, always wins. I'm like, here are the levels. There's can't do anything against the thing that your deck is doing, right? So an example of that would just be like mono red goblins against Parfait. Like I played mono red goblins against Parfait last year against an awesome guy. He had unsleeved mono red goblins held together with a rubber band. And I was like playing Parfait. So I was just like, play Oath of Druids. And he's like, scoop. It's like, I don't have natural ice. Like,
yeah, or just like if your opponent has a Cop Red and 2 Warmth.
Yeah.
Like when he beat me, he had 2 Warmth in play. That's really hard to get under because you can't even get your curse scroll operational because he keeps gaining 4 when you're trying to get under the curse scroll activation. Listen, so
anyways, that I just wanted to put that. So that's like the worst, right? So it's like, oh, like Dreadnought, like Burn against Dreadnought, not very fair. Obviously, Burn has tools now, but like at the baseline, the way it works is like if Dreadnought does their thing, which they do all the time, Burn is pretty helpless, especially in game one. In game one, exactly.
You sideboard it's a match.
And I do generally agree. Like the huge thing that makes Dreadnought an amazing deck, obviously, is like when it does its things, basically very few decks can beat it, right? Just very few decks can beat turn 2 Dreadnought with Daze. No deck really can beat turn 2 Dreadnought with foil, like on like naturally, right? Not a billion.
Oh, especially with the Vision Charm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like just turn 2 jam with Daze and then counterspell back up on the phase back in. It's just like, it's super hard to deal with. But I think the next level is just like, okay, you have a plan, right? So Burn against Cop Red, you have a plan. You actually have a great plan. Goblins against Dreadnought, like Goblins against Dreadnought is really tough game 1, but after game 2 and 3, all of a sudden it gets like a lot more interesting, and Goblins can steal game 1. So it's like the Storm deck, I don't think is helpless against the Dreadnought deck. I think it actually has a pretty viable plan to play slow. I do think that not a lot, but I do think that some number of things need to go right in a good way. As you mentioned, like Meddling Mage is a huge change to texture matchup, and Armageddon, which we didn't talk about, is even bigger, right? So if I'm the Dreadnought player, I might just board out my there's just Dreadnoughts and just like play Armageddon Mage,
right? Like against like a lot of combat decks, you're just like Armageddon. They're just like counterspell, you're tapped out, get you, right? Like this deck is just like that resolves.
Yeah, your Arcane Denials have to get there, which I also think are really, like, you really want those to be counterspell, or at least those are memory lapse.
Really high leverage.
Yeah.
They can also help your combo. I actually have to go because I need to go to the gym. I have my first race of the year this weekend, so I need to train. And separately, I think we haven't cast in so long. I don't remember if I ever brought this up on the cast. After the comment you made about pyrokinesis and goblins, 3 different people, all very good players, to the tune of having won major pre-modern tournaments in the last year, reached out to me and said, who the hell sides pyrokinesis in against Burn? 3 different players.
Yep. Take it up with Smits. I didn't see them.
And I was just like,
take it up with Smits.
Bad to me,
take it up with Smits. I didn't see them in the top 8 of the Nationals. That's all I'm saying. Take it up with Smits, okay? Don't take it up with me. I'm not the Goblins player here. I play Ancient Tomb in my Goblins deck. I never beat Burn. Have to board out my Ancient Tombs. Okay, just take it up with Smits. Send all your hate.
I had a long conversation with Lan about, because I always thought Goblins was at some advantage against. Like obviously it's winnable from both sides. Has always been my opinion, and I'm like, I can win from both sides, but I like Goblins in this matchup. And Aaron was always like, no, Burn is so advantaged, and that's not what the scoreboard says. But Lan put it a different way. I think that Burn has to win mostly in gear 1, and it loses the other 2 gears almost every time. And Goblins can just play whatever the hell game they want, and sometimes their lackey doesn't die. Or just so if their lackey doesn't die,
You can't just say you're gonna leave and then drop something like that. Like, I played against goblins at the 1K at Bearded Dragon, and I was just ahead the whole time.
what gear?
Vortex gear.
Vortex gear. So 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just
2
like
with vortex.
Yeah, it's just like lava dart, lackey, shock, pile driver, like vortex. So my theory of the matchup is that my theory of sulfuric vortex puts them in check, right? Sulfuric vortex is like casting iron.
I am
like,
so down with
I know
vortex.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that you're not down. I'm saying to our audience, like, you cast, like, the reason why I'm so high on vortex is like when I cast the card, the game ends, and most of the time I'm the one that's not at 0, because like vortex gets in for 6 like super reliably, and sometimes it gets in for 8, right? So if you exhausted all of your resources, except for one fire blast, right, the vortex just does all of the rest of the work for you. And just and so the way it plays out against goblins is kind of like, well, goblins, this is like kind of the classic. I mean, I don't know if you wrote this. It's probably not you. Well, a designer wrote this or something. It's just like, one player has a machine, makes grizzly bears. One person has a machine, bolts face, right? The grizzly bears.
No, the analogy is one player it's Eric Taylor wrote it. It was one player has a machine that makes all grizzly bears, and one player has a machine that makes all gray ogres, right? And so on card advantage,
the one I was talking about is grizzly bears versus bolts. You're just bringing something else in there.
No. Eric Taylor literally wrote it, and it's literally this. And whatever the designer wrote, grizzly bears against bolts.
Okay, grizzly bears against bolts is just in support of my point right now, which is just that bolts don't race grizzly bears, right? Because each bear gets in, like the first bear, right, gets in for 8 damage, whereas the first bolt only gets in for 3. And so you have to direct all your bolts at creatures. And so your entire like paradigm against goblins is just like, you just don't let them develop, right? So the only creature, like the one, like, you have to kill the Mog Fanatic on turn. Well, you have to kill Mog Fanatic on sight, obviously. You have to kill all their goblins on turns 1 through 4, and then after that, you can no longer race them. So you have to have Sulfuric Vortex, and you have to stick your Ball Lightning if you can, and you just have to like give up on like Aaron was saying, just like if they cast Ringleader and they reload, like they're going to outvalue you. So it's much harder for you to play suppression. Like Curse Scroll is like super weak because it trades so poorly on mana, right? Lava Dart doesn't get the most important goblins. So eventually you need to start converting face instead of creatures. But it becomes a really strict, like I find it to be a very straightforward like philosophy of fire game, where it's just kind of like, okay, there's a creature on the table, I've got a bolt in my hand. I was like, is the creature going to deal, like, what's our life total? Is the creature going to deal 3? It's like, if it's not going to deal 3 before the game is over, then I'm going to bolt face, right? And if it is, I'm going to bolt the creature. And like, you just see whose cards convert for more value. But the thing is, the burn player in the non-ringleader world, right, has all the choices. Like, they get to dictate the pace. And I felt this when I was on the goblin side of just kind of like, I just have to play my guys, and I have to hope that the burn player doesn't like use their cards efficiently. Because the only way that they lose is if I have like a 2/2 that gets in multiple times.
I've lost from the burn side only when I was playing some terrible deck that Flint and Will made. So bad.
Yeah.
But I've lost from that side. And then
that deck had Goblin Patrol. So.
Oh my god, it was so bad. And then Fran thought that like the burn side was like 100% to win, because he played the goblin side and lost. And I watched, and he's just like, this is a horrible matchup. And I'm like, read your fucking cards.
Yeah. And
he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, your Gem Palm Incinerators were live because of his Milk Fanatics and Goblin Patrols. And he's just like, oh, you mean I didn't have to take that Ball Lightning? No. You could have also killed his Grim Lava Mancer that made you not cast any spells for 3 turns. He's just like, this matchup is much better than
yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Incinerator is crazy in the matchup if you can get it off, because like 2 for 1 just helps you grind so much.
Loses the game with 2 incinerators in his hand.
And it lets you dictate the pace of the game too. It's like the goblins. So that's actually kind of why I assume that Smith likes Pyrokinesis, because it allows goblins to have an angle other than just like playing creatures and hoping that the burn player doesn't have efficient ways to answer them, right? So like the way that I see the matchup is just kind of like, one, obviously Goblin Lackey should never stick, and that happens a lot less in pre-modern than it does in modern, because modern you play a lot of 2-mana burn spells, but pre-modern you play bolts and shocks, and lava darts post board, and then
could have seals. Yeah,
sure, whatever. Same. Yeah. So, anyways, I think that if the burn player can trade efficiently for toughness and still have stuff left in the tank, this is helped along a lot by Vortex and Ball Lightning, obviously. Goblins should be on the back foot for the entire match, basically. Like, I only lost one game to Goblins in that match because like I drew 3 lava darts and like they started playing 2 toughness creatures.
I think like, I've played like, not just the pre-modern matchup, but like the similar matchup in Legacy and in other formats like in earlier years. And my general opinion is that it is a challenging matchup for burn, but winnable on both sides. I think that if I had to stake my life on the matchup, I would take the Goblin side. And I am the burniest burn, Bernie 2020 in the
I mean, it's
it's
actually crazy to me how divergent the opinions are on this, because when I played both sides, I felt ahead when I was on burn and I felt behind when I was on goblins. Once again, the Ancient Tomb situation didn't help things, and technically I did miss a game-winning line in goblins versus burn that involved pyrokinesing my own stuff for sharpshooter triggers.
Oh, is that what you put that as a puzzle out on X? I didn't see it,
but I mean,
wait, you had pyrokinesis in your deck?
Yeah.
No wonder no one could see the line. They were just like, it was a John Cena situation. All right, I already sprinted and did kettlebells this morning. I'm just going to skip the gym now because of you.
You deserve it.
Instead, I'm going to make steaks.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I need to figure out my dinner situation too. I'll probably order from Carmentas or something. But Carmentas is closed. No.
Do you live near Rolo's?
I live like walking distance from Rolo's. We should go this week. Shout out to Rolo's, best burger in New York City. Like,
if we can get a table, I will Rolo's anytime.
We'll just eat at the bar. So why don't we just do like bar seating like right when they open, and then you're just like guaranteed to be able to snag it.
What time? What day?
I don't know.
Not tomorrow. We're going to Johnny's.
Let's say.
Oh, me and Johnny went to Spam a lot last week.
Yeah, how was that?
It was fine.
Okay.
I got to hang out with John.
Rolo's opens at like 5, so we'd have to do like Friday at 5 or something like that.
Friday at 5. Can I do that? Yeah, probably.
Okay, we'll follow up on that. Our viewers will. So shout out to Mano. Mano, come out all the way to Queens if you want to have an insane hamburger. A little bit about the Rolo's burger. It's a double burger, but it's not a smash. And I was very confused by this because I was just like, that is a very thick stack of beef. Oh, we didn't talk about the pounder that you ate. Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. So I ate.
Let me finish on Rolo's. Rolo's makes an insane burger, double burger, not a smash. Somehow, it just works. It's an amazing burger. Unbelievable stuff. If you're ever out in New York City and you're ever out in deep Queens, head over to Rolo's. We went to what's supposed to be like the last Fuddruckers in New Jersey, possibly the last Fuddruckers period. And
so it was me, you, Cam, and Asian Matt.
Yeah, and Mike just at Fuddruckers on display, they show you what the portions look like. And so
all of this story is true.
So you have ground beef coaster. That would be the third pound burger option. And then you have ground beef CD-ROM, which is the half pound. That's CD-ROM is a lot of beef. Half pound burger. That's 2 quarter pounders. But if you're still hungry, you can get 2/3 of pound burger. I can't think of many circles that are naturally occurring that in the world that are as large as a 2/3 pound burger. So that one's just kind of lost on me. I don't know. Think about like your computer desk. If you have kind of nice bookshelf speakers, like the size of one of the speakers, The Pound Burger, which is the one that Mike got, is like the size of a subwoofer.
And it's also thick.
It's like it's the size of like a frisbee. And Mike's like, I'm gonna order this burger. And I was like,
I didn't make top 8. I was like,
you're like, yeah, you're hangry. You're like, I'm hangry. We need this burger. And I was like, I don't think I can watch you eat this burger. Like, I don't want to watch you eat this burger. Like, I think it's like, this looks like an illegal, like, I'm not like a vegetarian, but like I'm a vegetarian with regards to a pound. Yeah, I'm vegetarian with regards to like I wouldn't eat a pound burger from Fuddruckers. Like I'd eat a pound burger at Rolo's. I'd eat 2 burgers from Rolo's because Rolo's is insane. But Fuddruckers, pound burger. This thing comes out. Mike doesn't put any vegetables on it. Just
they put cheese on.
Carb. Yeah, you said no cheese.
They put cheese.
Crispy onions, cheese, pound burger. The thing was gone in like 10 minutes. It was unbelievable. Then
I was just like, because also you get unlimited fries, but the fries were not good, so I didn't get
the fries weren't good. The shake was good. I didn't
get a shake because I'm not a glutton.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't also get
That's true.
You and Cam and Asian Matt all with your shakes.
Yeah. No, you did show some self-restraint. So yeah, you know, shout out to Mike's resting metabolic heart rate. Unbelievable stuff.
So I'm like 48. What do you actually? That's crazy. My resting heart rate is like 48, and I'm also 48 years old.
There you go. So great times were had by all. We still have pre-modern. You know, Flint and Mano, they'll come back around. I also like to be clear to Mano and to everyone listening. I do not think that Mano is a donk. In fact, I had to get really lucky to win, and I might have celebrated a little bit too hard. But that match was like completely insane. And
his green black deck against you.
Yeah, he's like green black. Man, I was playing green black oath. He didn't talk about it at all. Well, he's playing green black prison oath with Curse Scrolls and Bottomless Pit as kind of his close, and then he was just running the Shard Phoenix Chosen package. And that was a really tough one for Grotog. To the point that I had to Armageddon him 3 times to keep him off the mana to activate his Curse Scroll to kill me. And that was how I won. The most notable thing was Mana was like, I can't play a deck without Oath. He opens the tournament on Swamp Duress, and I have Meddling Mage on my turn, and I'm just like, well, Mana did just say that he won't play a tournament without Oath, but I named Smother anyways, and then he just played Oath of Druids and won that game 1.
You got what you deserved.
I did get what I deserved.
He gave you the lead.
I know. He gave. I could have metagamed against Mano. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I freaking love this format. Every single time I play, like,
I watched you play a stupid Growatog deck for 3 hours the other day. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay, what am I doing today? Blah 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 blah.
To be clear to my viewers, my expectation is that you watch it on 2x speed.
Oh no, I can't do that. I hate how it sounds. Oh, let's see. I did archery this weekend. I split another arrow. So I have an arrow on order, and they took one of my other arrows to measure, you know, my shard length or whatever, shaft length. And so then I was just shooting with 4 arrows the rest of the day because I split an arrow. I should have taken a picture. People are like, "Oh, you're so cool." I'm like, every time people tell me how cool I am for splitting arrows, it cost me $13. It's just like,
you're just thinking about the lost buy-in.
You know, like the equity. Like the first time I did it, people are like, "Oh my god, I've never seen that happen again." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, cool." Like I have to go to the front desk and make sure the arrow that I split it with is also still okay to use, right? Because like there's some structural damage, you know. So it's expensive to split arrows. I keep splitting arrows.
Well,
so
save yourself an arrow and check out my new video on YouTube. And this week, stay tuned for another video on me playing Frantic Storm. Deck is sick. Shout out to Anton. Shout out to Mike Packer. I was just like, oh shoot, is the Storm deck real? And then like the Storm people were just like, we've been saying this for years. Storm is so real. I'm just like,
I think it's cool. I just, if you convince me that it can beat guys, I just hate playing any deck that
can't beat something. Yeah.
Something, but not just it's. I don't care if like if I can't beat Circle Protection and 2 Warmths in play, like God bless you. You
Yeah, but
decided
one
you
guy
wanted
is
to beat
blessing,
me,
yeah.
you know, but like there's just a guy with a guy's blessing in the tournament, right? Like, and I just can't beat him.
Just
like
have
that.
to dodge. Just have to dodge. He's got
but-
Guy's blessing in his deck. How likely is he to top 8? He didn't at the 1.5k. There were 2 of them. They didn't do it. They just had to dodge. But guess what? Avery didn't dodge. So
Did he play against both of us?
I mean, he said he played against Land. Like he just scooped game 1 and then tried to go for game 2.
Yeah. So
Your deck has
against both of
Armageddon
us.
though. Like I can beat a
Does.
blessing. I just can't beat a Geddon and a blessing. Getting blessing is
we
pretty
have
hard.
we have Geddon and Cataclysm.
Oh, Abeyance is actually pretty good.
We have 4 of those.
Yeah.
We have Abeyance main deck.
Yeah. So I can beat the blessing, but I can't really be like an Abeyance. Can't beat like Abeyance Armageddon blessing. You just beat blessing.
So if you're like brain freeze, you're just like response Abeyance. Even if it's a lethal brain
Doesn't
freeze,
work.
you get them, right?
Oh yeah. If you respond with Abeyance from that position,
Yeah.
but
Auto win.
I would Abeyance in response to the first meditate and then take my 2 turns.
No, but here's the thing: if you just wait for them to
They'll have all their arcane denials at that point though. It's like you're gambling against them. You're gambling against them having a full hand, right? It's like I generally think.
Oh, okay.
That
So you're saying
yeah.
they main phase they main phase because when you say like just Abeyance in response to their meditate, like sometimes they meditate EOT, right? Like,
well, if they meditate EOT, it's just for value, right? And then you just kind of have to go about your.
Oh,
business.
you're saying like, oh, so it's a main phase. They have rocks in play.
Yeah, but at
That's
some point,
meditate.
yeah,
Okay.
like from the Storm player's POV, right? Their hand is mostly ritual effects, and like the meditate is the thing that's gonna like dig them into the next like section of their combo, right? Like you're just chaining meditates in order to keep the storm going,
Like-
but the rest is ritual. So you just gas out. Like the way the deck fizzles, it's just like you meditate and you draw like 2 lands and
So
like extra rocks.
I'm like a little greedy. I want them to cast some storm in, and before I get my Abeyance down, they've got like 2 arcane. Oh, I guess 4 arcane denials. Yeah,
I mean,
I'll gamble.
so you could definitely, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to play against. I wouldn't want to try to slide it into the arcane denial, but I think Abeyance Armageddon is already like good enough.
So yeah, man, I guess that's a nightmare matchup. We have like 3 guys blessing, main deck Armageddon, main deck Abeyance.
Yeah, I wouldn't
sideboard
bother. I
Cataclysm.
would get lunch. I would do it. I would be like, oh, what are you playing? You're playing.
You might actually trigger Oath is actually the other thing. You're just like, how ignominious of a loss is this?
Well, triggering Oath just gives them a 4/4 at worst. So it's not like the end of the world. I'm not really worried about.
No, but
Oath.
it's still ignominious because you triggered Oath.
Yeah, sure. Man, this is the most unlistenable episode of Spike.
No,
Comedy ever.
people love this. This is a 3-hour-long Spike
It's
column.
so bad.
Are you kidding? People are just be like, "Oh my god, First I thought mommy and daddy were fighting, and then at the end they were just talking about all the different ways the Storm deck could lose to Landy Hoth, and I was enraptured. And then Mike skipped his run. It was my second workout of the day. I already got up first thing in the morning and did my first workout of the day.
You don't have
crazy.
like a treadmill in your building that you can run on?
I do.
Oh, is that what you do run on?
So it depends on the day, right? So like leg day on Sundays usually. So I just do an hour of zone 2 on the day after leg day. Because also I ran pretty hard in the park this weekend, so like I was like my suspension's all screwed up, so I'm old.
I do not know what it means to have screwed up suspension, but
so if you're in good cardiovascular shape, the thing that will screw you up in races is that you're like your suspension like a car, right? Like the architecture that holds the wheels together and like the door frame and everything. That's your suspension, right? So it's like your bones ache, your stuff creaks, right?
Okay.
You get through the race, the next day you can't walk because you have a shooting pain in your thigh that you've never had before. This is
why I don't run, but I put myself in I damage my suspension through other means. So
no.
I can't.
You really only damage your suspension from running. Other kinds like swimming won't do it. There's no impact, right? So running is just all impact. Like you don't have. If you have impact in how you work out, something went wrong, right? Like
yeah, effectively.
Yeah, so running. So the thing is, like, I have excellent cardiovascular, right? But there's no getting around the damage to your suspension when you're running, right? Like literally, it's like and
can't wear really bouncy shoes.
You can't. So that's what I was saying before. Like if I lose 5 pounds, like David Towers makes fun of me. He's just like says I've been fighting the same 5 to 10 pounds ever since the day that I met him. Right?
Yeah, sure.
I'm like, no, it's a very different 5 to 10 pounds. And in fact, it's moved. Right?
It just rotates.
Yeah. So it's moved. But like if you lose 10 pounds, like literally, that's so much less damage to your suspension. Right? Like because like let's say you're going
every stride,
right? Like
every stride does less.
Yeah. So and the other thing is like I'm into light shoes now, not bouncy shoes, which just go faster. Right. So so anyway, long story short, like I met my friend for coffee. We walked about 3 miles, walked around the park. Then I was just like, oh, we're going to go do our own thing. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to run a 5K now in the middle of the day. Right. That's when we didn't record over the weekend. I'm like, I won't be back for an hour. That's because I was going to run a 5K and I was going to walk home. Right.
You're like, Lanny, what are you up to? I'm like, well, if I lose this vintage cube, we can podcast. Yeah. And if I win out, then we can't.
We're not going to. Right. So,
and I won out.
Yeah. So guys, I was like, I'll be back in an hour because it's going to take me half an hour to do a loop on the.
Yeah. Normally I lose vintage cube in an hour. Normally, right? I lose, but this time I just didn't lose.
So then, and also like, anyway, long story short, usually on the average day, I get up, I sprint, and I do kettlebells in the morning, and then in the evening, I'll do an hour of zone 2. I used to do like about 6 miles in an hour. I can do almost 10 now, which is fucking crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah. No, it's not crazy that I can go that fast. It's crazy how to keep my heart rate. I couldn't even get into zone yesterday. Right. So I was like under 122, like the entire time, which is insane. And of course I'll run like a 10-minute mile once the actual race comes this weekend. But in the gym, I am indefatigable.
Yeah, you're a fast old man. It's pretty impressive. But I can't run for shit.
But my heart rate is like, super elite. Peter Tio would be okay with that. He would not be okay with other aspects of my health. For example, maybe my weight,
burgers,
maybe how many burgers
how many burgers you consume. Yeah, and we're already like put it on the books to have another burger.
All right, so important stuff. Please, if you're listening to this, take Matt Wan's mocks. April 21, Fifth Hammer Brewing.
Fifth Hammer Brewing. It's in Long Island City, Queens. It's one stop out from Grand Central. Super easy to get to.
Yeah.
He just wants to get the games in. He was just like, I just want to host
8 meddling mages to the top 8. And it's $1,000 tournament, theoretically. 2 weeks after that, May 4th, Spice tournament. Lanny and I will both be playing Beast Attack theme decks, apparently.
No, I'm gonna be playing Braid Smokestacks with like my brewing obsession is like turn one Ancient Tomb Mox Diamond something, turn 2 something that costs 4. And so right now my idea is like Ristic Study and then Braids. That's the plan.
Is that good against Beast Attack theme?
If I get it on turn 2, you won't have any lands in play.
I feel like
I'll draw a card. I'll draw a card whenever you do anything.
I don't like that. That sounds terrible for me. My deck doesn't have anything like Wasteland to disrupt you at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think Wasteland would be good there. It's like I want to trade my permanent for your permanent. But the thing is, I turn 2 Smokestack somebody, or I turn 2 Braid somebody on the play. And they're like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to play a second land. Pass the turn back to you. And I was like, oh, this sucks.
Then you're just behind?
Yeah. I was like, well, I have to sacrifice the Braids. So then the Braids was just a Stone Rain. So you're like, you can't turn 2 on the play. You kind of have to, they kind of have to have like 3 land. They can't have too many permanents, right? They can't have like 5 permanents because then your Braids doesn't do anything. But
what if they're like Squirrel Nest? Like first turn Elf, second turn Squirrel Nest.
Yeah, then I got to figure out something else to do.
Okay, I'm definitely playing Squirrel Nest.
Okay. I mean, maybe I'll have my Squirrel Nest too, and then our Squirrel Nest will just wash each other out.
I'm going to sacrifice a squirrel, not the Squirrel Nest, just in case you were wondering.
You can't sacrifice the Squirrel Nest to Braids, actually. You can't sacrifice enchantments to Braids.
Well, I wasn't intending to. I was going to sacrifice the squirrel that it makes.
Yeah, so I was just saying we would go even. We would both be Squirrel Nesting, and then we can go about our business like a normal game of Magic. Is there a way to Except for I have a 4-mana 2/2.
Is there a way to untap lands? Because what if I made 2 squirrels a turn?
Yes, there is a card called Crozen. Crozen Restorer. Crozen Restorer.
Sounds like it's 100 mana.
2 and a G.
100.
For a 1/2. Tap, untap target land. Threshold. Tap.
Ooh.
Untap up to 3 target lands.
But I don't have 3 lands in play. I'm playing against a Brains deck. I'm like desperately trying to untap this.
3 lands, but imagine you had 3 lands and each of those lands had Squirrel Nest.
Oh my god, I would have so many squirrels.
You would have so many squirrels. You could play your own braids to punish your opponent for not building squirrel nests.
I showed BK my deck. He's like, no, what if we just play Squirrel Nest? Now I'm going to play Squirrel Nest. He was like, I think Squirrel Nest is the answer.
I mean, there you have it. Officially the Johnny Colony.
But he was really just like getting me because I played a Squirrel Nest combo deck at Grand Prix Milwaukee in like 2002, and he beat me in the last round of the Swiss when like both of us were like theoretically live for top 8, but like kind of not, right? You know, like I only had to win one of my last 3 matches to top 8, and I lost the previous 2. So both of my opponents, what's his name? He's a Pro Tour champion. Wesco, and I think I lost to Wesco and Turian, who both made top 8. And then like I still was kind of live if I beat BK. But BK beat me. I had 2 jungle barriers in play. And he beat me by casting Reckless Charge on a Birds of Paradise, then flashing back Reckless Charge. He said Bird Lightning and 6'd me when I had 2 jungle barriers in play. I was very unhappy because I was planning to top 8 that Grand Prix.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah.
That's a delightful story.
Bird Lightning.
Oh, yeah. So your conclusion is that my GAT video is too long. Yeah.
No, I watched all 3 hours.
So your conclusion, where are you on the deck now? Because it sounds like you're super low on the deck after saying it's possibly one of the best decks.
On GAT?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
I've been on GAT as one of the, I think it's like,
fifth.
No worse than the 3rd best deck in the format. No worse than that.
Yeah, it's so hard to evaluate these things.
And so the thing is, I won't play because I'm not good at it, right? Like, so like, it's weird to me. Like, I try to imagine what your conception of my conception of myself is, and I'm like, I think this deck is like no worse than the 3rd best deck in the format, but I won't play it because I know I'm not good enough. Versus like I think that Fran's deck isn't hard to play and that it's overrated. But I would have played it if you didn't trick me. And Fran said that is, he used the word low blow, and I feel like that is incredibly accurate. He's like, you're never gonna say no to playing the red deck. And that was 75.
That was like good. That was like good though, because I actually never play the red deck in tournaments. Like I've played it very sparingly. In like the online leagues, and I've never played it in a paper tournament. So it was nice for us to, do the same 75, get some clout behind for Vortex. I know this divide is never going to be solved, but
Tom was coming too, right?
We were going to triple.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Like if we were all same 75, that was so cool. And then you played the good one, and I just wanted to play my meme deck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I knew in my heart that Seal of Fire was better.
But you had the ugly shocks.
I have this terrible shocks, right? Like I have terrible Seal of Fire too. Don't get me wrong, but these shocks are the worst Magic card of all time. There's no English equivalent to them, right? Like they're like, oh, let me look this up on Gatherer. You can't. It's just like a dancing ballerina, and you have to believe me that it's a shock, right? Like it's crazy. It doesn't even look like a Magic card.
Yeah, that's like an angle shoot right there. It could be a Warlord's Fury. You would never know.
But I don't. I'm past that in my life. I just don't. It's just. I realized like something like maybe 2 years ago. Like I'm just so past ever trying to get away with things anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody would. I don't think anybody in pre-modern would willingly try to pass a mystical archive shenanigan as like a different card.
No.
Because that would be insane.
What I mean by that is like in no aspect of my life do I try to get away with anything, right? Like, so like when I was younger, especially, I'm like, oh, I wonder what I can get. Like when you try to get away with things, just like I guess there's like some negative connotation or some like mean spiritedness to it, but it's not necessarily illegal, right? It's not necessarily like, like somebody's getting hurt, but like you're just winning in exchange. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, but I'm just like, I just don't ever try to get away with anything. Right. Like, I'm just like, what does it cost? Okay, I'll pay that, or I won't. Right. And then I was like, all right, I just won't do that thing. Like, okay, like, how do you feel about this? Okay, cool, we'll do that, or we won't. And I just don't try to shenanigans. I don't try to negotiate anything. I'm just like, I'm just not into it anymore. But when I was younger, I'm like, what can I get away with? How can I sand off this edge? Like, do you have no idea what I'm talking about?
No, I actually fundamentally agree. Like, it's pretty, at least when it comes to like equity, I hate when they're just like, the idea that like people got rich by being frugal, right? There's this class is like, oh, how'd you make your $100 million? It's like, well, instead of eating out 4 times a week, I ate out 2 times a week, and now I'm a millionaire. And it's just kind of like, okay. And it's like, it's like the same, and it comes in social life. Like, I mean, my view of it is just strictly just like, it's super annoying. Like, I don't know if you've experienced friends like this, but I just like, if I owe my friend $4, I'm just like, I'm not like, or sorry, if my friend owes me $4, like, cause obviously I'm not, whatever. Like, if my friend owes me $4, like, I'm not gonna hound him for it.
Just like, whatever.
I'm just gonna wash it out. If they owe me $20, I'm not gonna hound them for it. If like, honestly, if they owe me like, pizza came out and they owe me 50 because, them and their partner or whatever. Like, I'm just not like, I just don't care. I'm not gonna hound it for them. Like, and like, if they're going to like angle me for pizzas, like, once a month, for like 6 months or something, and I'm out like $300, but I got to hang out with my friend. Like, the other thing is like,
no, but they're not a very good friend if they're doing that. No,
but that's what I'm saying. It's like, I know they're not going to do that. Right. They're going to be like, they're going to be like, oh, I'm just, it's like, I kind of don't go for that. And then also I don't go for like waiting for like stuff to be discounted, I'm like, oh, I really want this thing.
That's how you have 2 extra Taylor Swift tickets.
It could be 15.
Germany, buddy.
Those were discounted. Those are easier to buy at face value than they are or they're harder to buy at face value than they are to buy discounted, because you can't buy them discounted. You can only buy them at face value or secondhand. But yeah, if you're out there and you want to go see Taylor Swift in Germany, my parents decided they didn't want to go with me and my wife. So 2 tickets up for grad. They're just a cool, I think $740 each, which is like VIP standing room. The resale value is...
You get to sleep with Taylor, right? It's one of the perks.
Insane. So yeah,
not Taylor Swift, yeah, Taylor Lautner,
just somebody still down, still
down,
still lots of equity in that. So yeah, we're over angle shooting on this podcast. We're over being Spikes. We're only brewing.
We're now Johnny's.
Stacks and Beasts.
Johnny Colony.
We're only playing Storm. I don't know. I mean, shit, we're already 3 hours in, but like what I'm saying. And I know we exaggerate. I know we exaggerate on this podcast. The decks are surprisingly close. I do think that one of the biggest things about pre-modern is just like being a skilled player and navigating well gets you really far. And so like sometimes you make deck building choices that are based around the cards that you like to play. And like I know we get into heated arguments about that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, like forbid, absorb, force spike, stifle.
Okay. I like playing absorb. Absorb is good against red. But once you're in the Landy Ho colony and you've got Arcane Lab in your sideboard, forbid is just right.
Yeah, certainly. Right? Like, yeah. These things obviously relate to each other. The larger point that I'm trying to make is that I think that like people got the impression that because we say things so confidently and with such incredible conviction due to our hubris and general nature as human beings who are like, I don't know, super into saying stuff, I mean, we have a podcast for crying out loud. Like we're here to make statements.
I'm going to use the word popular on a relative basis, but every pre-modern player listens to our podcast.
Not the Swedes, Mike. Not any of the Swedes.
Okay, every English-speaking pre-modern player listens to our podcast.
Do we need a pod in Swedish?
Like our friends just go to other states. They're like, "Oh my God, are you so and so? I heard about you on the Spike Column."
Anyways, our gigantic audience. Anyways, people get the impression
there's not
that it's like playable, unplayable. There's only one right things to do. Like
Serenity is unplayable to me. It's too slow.
there are what I think to be like clear upgrades. But
what if I played Serenity in my Beast Attack deck against your Braids deck?
Oh,
you would be cooked.
I would get annihilated, but it would cost you like 4 mana and I draw a card. But
you could draw 1 card and then all of your stupid machinery would disappear.
Yeah. Well, so anyways, I want to tie this in because to Vintage Cube and then we gotta call it because this is insane. But like Vintage Cube is like crazy because like the power level and the synergy, like the complexity of it. Like so Vintage Cube is like immense and crazy. And like you cannot obsess with trying to play Vintage Cube or to some extent like any cube optimally. Like you can't just like I actually Andreas Peterson, Eco Baronin on Twitter regularly posts these what's the picks. And somebody posted, they're like, oh, it's this pick if it's low stake, this pick if it's high stake, and this is the correct pick. And I was just like, well, why is your high stakes pick and the correct pick different? And they're like, well, the picks were like, it was between Birds of Paradise and like Polluted Delta. Pack one, pick one in like a medium strength pack. And I was just like, why do you think why would you do something different? He's like, well, I think Birds of Paradise is correct. And if you're really, really focused on optimizing, you'd pick Birds. But I just feel more comfortable. I feel uncomfortable drafting green decks, and I feel more comfortable drafting decks that can use Polluted Delta. And
none of this makes any sense to me.
Anyways, just come along on this ride. So like, if you just kind of expand that, you look at a format like pre-modern, at the end of the game, like Magic's complex. So like, you know, BK likes Wallet Roots. I like Call the Herd. Like these are all things that can be close. And at the end of the day, the decider can just be like, okay, well, like I just feel really comfortable. Like people were putting Stifle and Grotog where it makes even more sense than Landstill because you could like Stifle fetch and that turns on your days, right? And I just like, you know, I was just like, it's just not the card. It's not my philosophy of the deck. It's not how I want to play.
Grotog? There's so many cards I would rather have, like Swords to Plowshares, which you once said was impossible to play.
Yeah, exactly.
So in Vintage Cube or any cube, like you probably don't know this about me because I don't think you were playing Magic at the time. I played a lot of cube like in 2012, 2013, a lot. And I think before it was cool, like I used to post on my Tumblr, like if you can look at my Tumblr, like all my cube decks, and like I would post my.
It's just all red, just a bunch of red.
So you did follow, because so my thing was I was super into cubing, right? And you know, my friend Taya Steele wrote like the cube column at Star City and stuff like that. It was like 2012, 2013. And I talked to Jerry T a lot about this at the time. And it's just like, you know, how applicable are my skills, right? Because like I was a really good cube drafter where I was like, you know, and it was funny. I remember I beat streamers while they were streaming. Like I didn't really know about streaming. And then like people were like, oh my God, you're on stream right now. And he's like, he's swearing and he's so pissed that you just ball lightning him or whatever, right? So, but I always just forced red, even in Powered Cube, right? You know, I think I once passed an Ancestral Recall to take a Zealous Conscript's first pick. And people are like, you're crazy. And then I won the draft. But yeah, so I just don't even understand what this Birds of Paradise Polluted Delta thing is. Polluted Delta seems much better than Birds of Paradise because Birds of Paradise is a green creature. And Polluted, if you were not going to draft like me, right, and take
it's just the context of the cube. Like the mana acceleration is like extremely good.
Those are
this just in the playmats for the playmat prizes for the Endless Wurm Spice Tournament came in from Arcade Post. They are insane. It's like a Morphling playmat with a custom worm drawn on it.
Is this on Spike?
It's on the Discord.
Modern?
It's an unmasked playmat for second place, and it's an Avatar of Woe. But the first place illustration of the worm is just like amazing.
Where in general or in?
It's in Mail Day. So yeah, be sure to join us at Endless Life Brewing and join us at.
Oh man, I would
Fifth
want the
Hammer
unmasked one more than the.
I'm sure you can. Well, it does say second place on the unmasked one. But,
oh shit, man! Have I just cursed myself?
oh, this is actually too good of a first place prize for a tournament that's just for funsies. Because then it's just gonna make me want to try.
Okay,
Sonny, what have you done?
These tournaments are wild. Like, I just want to reiterate. Obviously, we have a podcast and we have a Facebook group where people are crying that we hadn't posted a podcast recently. But we have a podcast, and I wanted to podcast with you. But I really just want to prop these tournaments that Sonny and Asian Matt are making. And like April 21, Fifth Hammer, it's a brewery. May 4th, Endless Life, also a brewery. So if y'all like beer and you like pre-modern and you want to try to beat Michael J.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. The playmat goes to most creative deck for second and third places. My bad. So you don't get first place for winning. You get most creative deck. So you can definitely swap the unmask for the morphling if you want.
Okay.
All good. Anyways, we've hit a record. I don't know if I can live with the shame of having podcasted for 3 hours and mostly just spent all that time. Like, we did an hour on Storm. It's like unbelievable. But I don't know. Some folks want that. I mean, okay, so here's the funny thing.
People are going to listen to the end of this. Are you kidding? Do you know anything about our audience?
I've played like a little bit of Storm. You've played basically no pre-modern Storm. There's like people out there with just like 1 billion games on pre-modern Storm. They were probably yelling at their phones, like their
I think you did a really good job of articulating some play lines in Storm. I think you did a very good job.
I think there's probably some matchup knowledge that I would benefit from on. So, well, anyways, check out my YouTube and you'll see it. And when are we playing pre-modern next? Meetup. I'll be in Mexico when it's back from Mexico, Thursday the 11th and Thursday the 25th.
Let me look. As I only play in meetups. Let's see.
Upcoming events. 11th and
25th, May 4th.
This has been the Endless Spike Colony, sponsored by the Endless Life Tournament of Endlessness.
Love Mike.
Love Spike Colony.
Game over.